Steps up and throws to the end zone, and Dixon is in. Touchdown.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Here's Gordon again. Jump cut in the hole. Set to the outside. And Gordon diving for the end zone. Touchdown, Oklahoma State.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Now the throw across the middle. That was caught. And on a broken tackle, J.P. Richardson. Touchdown.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
And here's Green. He's going to keep it. And Green breaks loose. Garrett Green across midfield and forced out of bounds at about the 25 by D. Winters.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Lance Leipold's group with a 14-zip lead on Matt Campbell's Iowa State team. And Jalen Nolan is out to the races. Down the sideline. Noel tripped up inside the 5.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
R.J. Harvey, direct snap. He keeps it, and now UCF has a touchdown to start the ball game.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Well, here we go on another week. We head into the next week of college football, but still one more game to be played tonight, Florida State, Boston College. We'll have a note or two on that. We'll also look ahead to the week that we have, including that game in Ann Arbor where Michigan's offense better have something because they're about to bring a home at home against Texas. And, of course, Texas doing what you would expect, dominating Colorado State, but a little bit more even than I thought. But that's one of the things to look forward to. Baylor and Utah up in Salt Lake City, all of that we'll get to, including R.J. Young, covers college football for Fox Sports, J.J. Joe, Phil Bennett, who was in Lubbock for what would have been a monumental win for Abilene Christian in what fell just short at the 4 or 5 yard line when they went for 2 to win it outright. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina. I'm going to give you the names. Tell me what this list is. USC, Georgia, Oklahoma State, Arizona State, Vanderbilt, And then this list: LSU, Clemson, Texas Tech, Oregon, West Virginia, A&M, Virginia Tech.
The first list is teams that feel pretty good today, and the second list is teams that, in spite of the fact they might have gotten out with a win, they don't wake up not stressed.
The other one sounds like top 25 teams that lost or something along those lines. I don't know. The first one sounds like just big wins from this weekend.
Yeah,
nothing in
because
particular.
I included Vanderbilt with
are
Georgia.
you just talking big wins? Is that
just,
it?
Those who feel pretty good. Those with a bullet on the way up. Again, Vanderbilt, I don't know how many more games are going to win, but it was a great win for them. And then teams that played, and some of them played really good people that will beat up other people. But right now, the fan base has got to be like LSU and USC late last night. I thought it was a great football game, and Garrett's disappointed, but a great game. We'll get to that too. Clemson, Texas Tech, Oregon, they won, but West Virginia just honestly got manhandled. A&M, they lost to a really good football team, but in front of 108,000 people, and you got to scratch their head again because the offense didn't look like much of a difference. And then Virginia Tech's the one that lost to Vanderbilt. But those are just some of the thoughts from overview without being able to get into 100 games over the weekend.
Yeah, I think that there were a bunch of not good games, clearly, because it's week one and that's when you're playing your lesser opponent. But there were some really good ones, and there were some really interesting things that came out. I think Danton Land is the hire of the offseason, clearly, because Garrett put it this way. We were talking about him on Triple Option a second ago, but Craig, you should be mad at Lincoln Riley for sticking with Alex Grinch for that long, because they haven't played defense like that on the Lincoln Riley team in forever.
Yeah, I mean, nothing they could really do to change the Oklahoma tenure,
No,
I'm not really thinking about that or worried about that at this point. And even if Alex Grinch had been better, I mean, Lincoln's eyes were still wandering, obviously. So, yeah, that game last night was a really entertaining way to end the weekend officially, although I know we have a game tonight. And what a win for Southern Cal and for Lincoln Riley. I think that they've obviously, just based on the little sample size we have right now, have made strides on defense. That was very clear last night. And they've got a pretty good little quarterback there in Miller Moss, who carried over his performance from the bowl game. They've got great weapons around him. And I was really impressed with USC. They were better than I think most anybody expected them to be. And that will play really well, hopefully moving forward for them to, make things more interesting out west and certainly shake up the Big Ten race possibly a little bit as well. Not trying to get too far ahead on any of these things, but that was more than I think you were expecting from USC. From LSU, I think there's still a lot of things to like. And look, if this was the previous era, then you'd probably be sweating that first loss a little bit more, but they've got cushion. They've got the SEC schedule. And so if they handle that well, and yeah, they now have to remain pretty unscathed, save for like one more loss, but that wasn't like a bad loss in terms of you're a bad football team. That was just like you got beat. You made some big mistakes. There's some things to clean up, but there's also some things to like, starting with your quarterback there and Garrett Nussmeier and having a pretty great wide receiver, which you're used to at LSU every year. But Kyron Lacey's a dog. They've got some things to clean up, but that was a very entertaining game, and props to USC for pulling that one out.
I love college football this weekend. I just sat there and watched play-by-play of that game last night, and of course, all the other the really bigger matchups, but others as well. How about Tedero McMillan of Arizona, who was named the Offensive Player of the Week in the Big 12? He had himself a monstrous game, 10 catches, 300-plus yards, 30 yards plus per reception, 4 receiving touchdowns in a game that was a high-scoring affair. Arizona's defense eventually started to make a few plays in their win to open up the season. This young man, there was a time during the game you wondered if he was going to break the record for most yards receiving in a game, the better among a few best performance over the weekend within the Big 12.
Yeah, he is unbelievable, and they were losing that game for a minute. And then Tedero McMillan and Noah Fafita decided that was enough. And he just went bonkers. I know he's not going to do that every week, but he is a physical mismatch with how big he is. He's got unbelievable speed. His strides are ridiculous. There's nothing not to like about him at all. And he's going to be a headache for everybody.
Well, y'all know when Arizona started getting talked about joining this conference, I was I think probably the first Big 12 people, if not the first Big 12 person to start like really pumping the hype horn for Teteroa McMillan and Noah Fafita as well. So I am not all that surprised because I watched those guys do their thing a lot last year, and to see them though have the type of connection right out of the gates and in a game where they needed that to be the case was very cool to see. And to see records fall as he's now the all-time single game leader in Arizona history was very cool for that to be the start of this new season. And now has ramped up expectations in a major way, but I think expectations were already pretty high for Teteroa McMillan. He's a guy who should very well be all year long in the Biletnikoff conversation. But with Arizona in general, I think that, yeah, they certainly got their fair share of a scare early on. You have to give a lot of credit to New Mexico, though. I thought that Dampier, their quarterback, played really well. Wysong's a really good receiver, and they just were, putting up a great fight. And it looked like it was just going to be a shootout, which, hey, if you're Arizona, you still feel good about that because you've got Teteroa McMillan and you've got some of the other weapons. It wasn't just those two, but it was the headliner for sure. But offensively, I think Arizona was pretty okay. Defensively, early on, Dampier was hitting them for some big plays. And, they were able to finally start to kind of stack stops and scores together and get the lead and pull away to end it comfortably, but certainly got a little bit of a scare early on. And you were definitely wondering, like, oh, my God, is this defense just going to be atrocious this year after losing Johnny Nansen and losing some players to the portal? So, yeah, that was a good win for Arizona.
They won the game. They separated, scored a bunch of points. They had to score a bunch of points. They won the game. Arizona State had a really nice win, which was surprising because of how dominant it was. Also, safety Trey Rucker, Oklahoma State, Tech returner Dre McCray, and Cincinnati's Brendan Sorsby, the transfer, also named first week Big 12 Players of the Week. Kelly Ford ratings. This is after the games that we saw. This is what he has, at least after the first week of games, and who he has projected still at this time. We'll do this on Mondays to win the conference. Utah, Kansas State, who were the ones that were mainly the favorites, and then the UCF moved up a notch or two, KU, Oklahoma State. Those are the ones, at least after the first week of game. No surprise, Tech dropped badly after the near loss to ACU. That's another discussion we'll have at some particular point this year or this week. West Virginia, they blew a tire, hyperventilated. I thought maybe the weather delay might give people a chance to maybe they were beaten up by Penn State. They were absolutely, Penn State was a better football team.
Bigger, stronger, faster, better all the way around. And the advantage that West Virginia was going to have was going to be the emotions and, getting in the head and being at home. Well, then the weather killed it because after the weather delay, people left. I mean, it's long enough. They're down by 14. How long are they going to hang around? It was just a very disappointing start for West Virginia. I still think they're going to be formidable in the Big 12, but this does show a gap between them and potential playoff teams like Penn State. And then Penn State came to play. They were just better in every single aspect of the game than West Virginia, and it wasn't close.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that you couldn't take advantage of a golden opportunity with a big set of eyeballs watching that one and knowing that you had it at home and here's an old rival and just knowing what that win would have meant on your resume to not be able to, one, not win, but two, not look all that good was, yes, is certainly very disappointing for West Virginia. I think it's just a reality check as much as anything else. Penn State's a very, very good team. Drew Aller's one of my favorite players to watch when he's on. I mean, he can spin it, man. He's really talented, and this might be the year where he really blows up with Andy Kotelnicki. But Andy Kotelnicki had familiarity. He knew how to attack West Virginia, and they've got great weapons like Aller and Singleton and others. And, they just took it to the Mountaineers. And West Virginia did not have much of a response past that first half. So, yeah, the weather delay was what it was, but that had no bearing on the outcome. Penn State was clearly the better team. And you know what? West Virginia is not necessarily a playoff contender. I didn't think that necessarily coming in either. So that's not shocking to me, but I think Penn State certainly is. And if they're in that field at the end of the year, I won't be surprised at all.
Bobby, our friend Robert Thornton, Bobby from Myrtle Beach, is in Aruba. He was on a cruise and sent an email to me yesterday morning. All I can say is that the loss for my Mountaineers was brutal. Watched some of it in many bars on this ship and might say that there were not for some beers in me, I might have been even more depressed. I thought this game would be close, the old saying going back to the old drawing board. And as always, Bobby from normally Myrtle Beach, but from Aruba. All right. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark on Saturday during Big Noon Kickoff made this quote: "It's incumbent on me to create value. Big brands, big markets matter. We'll see what happens." Of course, there was the speculation a lot, and I haven't heard much of it, but he did say this on Saturday. John Wilner with the tweet and about what he needs to do for the Big 12.
I mean, I think that's him confirming that UConn's, very much in the water. And I think that we've made it clear our feelings on how it is, but best of luck to you. If it creates value, it creates value. But I'm having a hard time understanding why this is happening now.
I hope we're going to get to the UConn slide in a second to go along with this, but
go ahead and give it now.
That's pretty much a stock quote from Yormark at this point.
Yeah,
that's not anything brand new. That's not, no disrespect to Wilner or anything. We like him, but that's pretty much what Brett Yormark always says at this point. I don't think that's really shedding any new light, but certainly that's his prerogative, and the commissioner is going to go and try to do what he can to improve the league. And that doesn't mean that everything he wants to go and do is going to be approved or is going to even get far down the road. But there are going to be things that they go and explore, and he's going to put in front of them to explore. And UConn as an institution in some form or fashion is one of those things. So here we are, and we'll see where it goes. I have no earthly idea on what to expect. If you tell me they're going to be in the league, I won't be surprised by that he drums up enough votes eventually. If you tell me that there's not enough support, I would believe that without even blinking. So, yeah, I don't know where that stands. And quite frankly, I don't really care.
No,
I really don't.
I know. We've discussed that.
I mean,
give everybody the football score.
Well, I don't have it in front of me.
50-7.
Yeah, UConn lost 50-7 this weekend to Maryland. So, yeah, it's a power team. But I saw that score, and I'm sitting there thinking, so that just needs a few years of investment. Is that what we're saying? UConn football is just all it takes is Big 12 entry and a few years of investment, and they won't lose 50-7 to Maryland in their opener. If you say so. I mean, this isn't about football and UConn, obviously. It's about basketball with UConn. But that football program, man, like you can tell me all you want to about investing, but I need some proof in front of me to believe that would be the case. So again, from the commissioner's side of things and the reports out there that they would stunt the football entry, yeah, you'd have to get anybody to go along with this, it seems like, and especially when you see a score like on Saturday. So We'll see what happens there, but
yeah, I also mentioned those who had a bad weekend, Houston and Willie Fritz. We knew this was not going to be the great start. We're going to do a summary for the schools in the Big 12 with what happened and also what they have coming up this week. Who was the only FBS team that was a double-digit favorite who did not win this weekend? 59 of these games, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know.
Virginia Tech.
Well,
58-1. Arizona and Washington were also double-digit favorites. They both won. And then you had one, and it was Virginia Tech, a 14.5-point pick. Chiron Drones and Virginia Tech had themselves a tough game. Great win for Vanderbilt.
I said, I don't know, a couple weeks ago that this was one of the games I had my eye on because I thought with Diego Pavia, who I have now nicknamed El Bribon, the rascal.
Man, I knew about him. I check box scores for every game, every single week, and I was eyeing him last year, and I was like, man, who is this kid? He's every week I was just kind of drawn to his score, and then I saw him go to Vandy this offseason, and I won't usher you to a video where I was predicting great things, but I'm really not that surprised. He's a player. Like he can make plays.
I'm not going to tell you.
A chip on his shoulder too.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Vandy's going to all of a sudden contend for the 12-team playoff or the SEC title.
No.
But I will tell you that because he's there, you cannot just think that you're going to beat Vandy. Because he's a difference maker, and he's a quarterback like they haven't had in a long time. He, like I said, he's a rascal. He's got moxie. He's got all of those things you need, and he's with an offensive coordinator that he knows well. Clark Lee has the right kind of chip on his shoulder himself to kind of pass that on. So, I mean, I wouldn't, if you're an SEC fan and you're like, oh, well, Vandy, that's at least a week I don't have to stress. That's over.
Yeah, they have Alcorn State, then Georgia State the next couple of weeks, in Missouri on September 21st, of course, will be and then Alabama. And then not far from that in early or late October, of course, then you go into the SEC rotation of Texas and LSU and Tennessee, among some others.
Well, they've been the butt of the jokes when we've needed to search for a team name to go like, who's the worst in the entire country, like that you just dunk on. Oh, Vanderbilt, right? Like that's your example, especially out of the SEC of like the team in last, but that might not be the case this year. I mean, we'll see. They got a tough schedule and whatnot. They'll be underdogs in a lot of games, but he gives them a chance. He gives them an attitude and some excitement.
All right, here's one game tonight. Craig's favorite team, Oklahoma, won. They were supposed to. Nebraska won. They were supposed to, although with them, you never know. They have Colorado this week. We'll discuss that in a moment. Garrett last night joined the not allowed to say anything. Although, again, they lost to a really good football team, and USC has a little extra bite to them now. And Miller Moss was great. But tonight, Florida State will try to win their first game. At Florida is misspelled. Florida State will try to win. ESPN tonight, as soon as we're done, we get home, we cuddle up to the television, and they play Boston College.
16.5-point favorites, and let's see if they get close to that.
All right.
Well, that's all I'm wondering. And, you know, my thought on this is I watched a lot of football, and I saw 20 quarterbacks or more that I would have rather them gotten.
Okay.
At this point.
And
yeah,
and it's a conference game.
I think DJU's got some attributes that you like, but I did feel like during the offseason he was sort of being put near the top of all the transfer quarterbacks, and I didn't quite fully understand that after having watched him at Clemson and at Oregon State a few times last year. Like, good player, but not like difference maker, Jordan Travis level, come in and not skip a beat type of player. And I don't know that was necessarily how he was presented this offseason. So that was a little bit of a wake-up call. It wasn't all on him last week either. But, yeah, certainly that's not as rock-solid of a spot as you thought maybe going in if you were a Florida State fan. So we'll see. They should win tonight, but if they don't, then my God, what a day tomorrow will be. But I do think they take care of business tonight.
Here are the games from Texas schools coming up this week, and who is favored by how much, at least at this particular time. And that might have moved a little bit too. SMU +10 against BYU. Texas a 5-point favorite. That's going to go up. I'm going to tell you right now, I watched part of Michigan and Fresno State. Michigan, this is a good year. Not to just play Michigan. I'm not saying that. They're going to be pretty good. But I think Texas is just going to have too much. Baylor, a 17-point underdog at Utah. Texas State, UTSA, great. G.J. Kinney, Jeff Traylor. Sam Houston State, a big underdog at UCF. Houston plays at Oklahoma. Ouch. And then also Texas Tech after that scare against ACU will play at Washington State. And right now they're a 1-point underdog in that game.
Michigan, I want to go back to them for a second. They're the defending national champs, and they're the defending national champs until they're not. But I would be concerned if you're the defending national champ and you don't tell me until the morning of kickoff who the quarterback is. That to me is concerning. Like, that doesn't mean I will tell you this. If you're a fan who buys the whole, like, we're having a great battle, we don't know. No. You're not having a great battle. Nobody's winning it. That's bad news. And for them to have to wait that long, and then they're going to have to go through it on offense. Ryan Day, like, I thought watching that game the other day, I was like, Ryan Day is running out of excuses to beat this team this year, given what his situation is compared to theirs. And even while their defense is good, they've got good players.
They don't play for 3 months.
But, like, you win games big time in college football now, but you usually have a quarterback who's playing at their best or is able to highlight the skills of your skill set players. They do not have that right now, and they won't have it.
Yeah, I mean, I expect Texas to win this weekend. The only thing that gives me any hesitation is the fact that it's in the big house. I mean, that right there, you just never know going into an atmosphere like that, how a team might respond to having, 100,000 plus at their backs. But certainly based on what we saw in week one, I feel pretty good about that. It appears that Michigan has some round pegs and square holes, like at quarterback. And I don't know that was handled all that well based on what that looked like and sort of where that whole depth chart just sort of looks after last weekend. Yeah, that was not what you were hoping for if you're a Wolverine fan. So very interested in how they come out against Texas and what quarterbacks used and how and whatnot. But on the other side of things, you feel really great about Texas. I mean, they had their way with Colorado State. You got to see a lot from Quinn Ewers, but also from Arch Manning. In terms of viral highlights, there were quite a few coming out of that game. They've got a lot of weapons. They've got a lot of confidence, and they got a lot of talent. So, yeah, I think Texas is going to be a tough test for Michigan, and that could be a huge win for Steve Sarkisian here in the Big House this weekend.
UT has great speed everywhere, including, of course, now on defense, not just the weapons. They have their transfers, Golden, Bond. They all made plays. I do think, and by the way, for them to play in front of 110,000, their stadium's pretty large where they play in Austin, although not always filled, but they had 99 plus. So it's not like they haven't played in front of. They went to Alabama and won. Different team, but it's not like they haven't played in front of large crowds or a big stadium.
And I'm not saying that's going to affect Texas. I'm thinking more propel Michigan. Like,
well,
have the home crowd behind your back, and maybe rattle Texas a little bit. But yeah, I'm not thinking that of like Texas is going to go in there and be intimidated, but it is 100,000 cheering for you versus against you. There is a difference.
No, there is a difference. Yeah,
that's where I'm hanging my hopes, quite frankly, for Michigan, because based on just watching the two teams play, I don't love the overall matchup for the Wolverines.
Yeah, I ran into a couple. I played golf yesterday morning. I ran into a couple of people getting out of a car that had Texas logo or whatever as a cap, and I said, I think they're going to win in Ann Arbor. Because you think? I said I just think they're going to have too much offense. They'd have to throw up a couple of times, like have a couple of bad turnovers to me. I'm not trying to downplay Michigan. They're still good, but I think it's a good year. It's a great year to play them in Ann Arbor compared to what it would have been like the last couple.
If they're up by 2 touchdowns compared to offense, it's going to feel for Michigan like they're up 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, like in quicksand. Yeah. I mean, or like you're in mud. Lincoln Riley, when asked about that win last night against LSU, which, again, I thought was a very entertaining game, Lincoln Riley said this, pretty good Big Ten football today. That's part of the newness, and that was a nice win. The SEC, if you take 4 games, and I'm not saying that Miami and Florida was a huge highlight game, but if you take the 4 games they were a part of, and yes, they won a bunch easily, but LSU lost. Notre Dame beat A&M. Mm-hmm. Miami beat Florida. And there was another game, Clemson and Georgia. Of course, Georgia was able to win that game. Those are 4 kind of highlighted games. Well, the conference is really good. I'm not trying to say watch out, but that's a nice win for USC, and it was a nice win for Miami, mm-hmm. and it was also a nice win for Notre Dame.
Fantastic win for Miami. That they throttled Florida in the swamp. And that's 2 programs going in opposite directions right now. USC looked really good. I mean, they really look like a complete team for the first time in a long time, as opposed to let's watch the Caleb Williams show, and then he's going to sit on the sidelines and pray that someone figures out how to make a defensive stop. So that was better to watch. Notre Dame and A&M was a really tough rock fight, and it just came down to who was going to bust a play late. It was Notre Dame. That's what happened. A&M, lost at home in a big home opener again. So the annual tradition of Texas A&M being upset about something that happens right off the bat continues, just like the changing of the seasons.
I really hate what the SEC and realignment have done to everybody having to beat their chest over their conference these days, man. But I get it. I totally get it. And hey, your first game in the Big Ten, you're Lincoln Riley, you're going to beat your chest because, hey, that Big Ten SEC back and forth is very real, and it's them 2 at the top, and that's going to be college football moving forward. So I just need to get used to it, but I do feel like what was kind of an SEC thing's now infiltrated every conference where everybody's got to compare everything at all times. And I know that's part of just the fandom, but man, it's so annoying sometimes. So in his case, I think it was valid to bring that up. And good for him. They went out and they beat LSU. They beat an SEC team. If they hadn't, he wouldn't have heard the end of it. And
especially him.
Old Dirty Socks would have been all on his radio show talking about how Lincoln Riley can't win this and Lincoln Riley this, and he ran away from the SEC and he ran away from Oklahoma. I don't think he's saying that today. So, yeah, Lincoln Riley had a reason to beat his chest, and we're going to hear a lot more about the Big Ten SEC comparisons.
The Alphas I'm sorry, Craig. The Alphas in the SEC flexed their muscles. What Georgia did to Clemson was criminal. Obviously, Texas winning big, and Alabama looked good in their opener. Some of those teams should have, but there were a couple of games in which LSU didn't win.
And I do think that you have to point that out, because otherwise, that the mouse ears aren't going to point that out very often. The propaganda machine's not going to point that out very often. So, you kind of have to take it into your hands and put it out there that, that Big Ten team beat an SEC team, and so on and so forth. And those opportunities come up, you do need to put that out there and make sure it gets seen, because it's not probably going to as much if you don't do that.
All right. We got a couple more good nuggets to get to before we talk to RJ Young on the first full weekend in college football. Miller Moss, last night against LSU, his PFF grade, third best in the FBC. Passing grade was fourth best passing grade. Big time throws under pressure, including the one down the sidelines that set up, and then the penalty for targeting the game-winning field goal. No turnovers. I thought he looked really good, but I saw him play in the bowl game. I was impressed with him. He's got some weapons. The running game's okay. But USC's defense still will need to get tested again. But I thought he looked really, really good, and you could tell the emotions in the postgame interview of what that meant to him.
USC's deep, like Miller Moss is a really good player, and he and Garrett Nussmeier, I like that they're both there of example of guys who waited their turn and got better, because they weren't ready to start, as opposed to, you're not going to be like, if you're not an NFL player, like right at the moment that you transfer, you're not going to be one right away. If you're blocked, I get it, and you're in the same year. If you're in that situation where you're a freshman, you got a redshirt freshman, he's really good, I get it. But if you're someone that's a little bit raw, like Miller Moss and Garrett Nussmeier were, stay, learn, get better, and they both did. I like him, and I'll tell you about the USC defense. They were not like last year. It was easy to beat them because they just got gashed by the run all the time. And LSU, even though that's not one of their strengths, teams like LSU with running backs had career nights against USC's defense last year. That didn't happen for sure.
Yeah, they and especially once it started going south, it seemed like they didn't have the ability to shut it off. All right, Zach Barnett with this one. Didn't think about this until I saw his tweet. College football has treated the nation to an LSU loss on the last 3 Labor Day Sundays. It's a national holiday at this point.
Yeah, it's unfortunately
playing
for Tigers fans, they're playing really good teams and not getting on the winning side, and now a streak has developed. So that's something hanging over your head, and certainly over Brian Kelly's head. That's not very fun. But last night, just putting that aside from the other losses of that streak, I mean that's one where you got to have a cooler head, man. You can't be so stupid. I mean, quite frankly, and that's what had Brian Kelly furious after the game. They did dumb stuff in that game last night, LSU did. So you have nobody to really blame but yourself. Had you kept your composure in certain situations, then you probably win that game. So they've got some things to clean up. It's not the end of the world, but I know it's social media, and so we got a bag on LSU, and they've got this streak and all of that. But overall, there's enough to like there if they can clean up some of the composure issues.
I would rather have played a team like that and lost, don't get me wrong, than played somebody and won 50-7 or 62-3, and you're an average or worse team. That you don't, you got to win. You want to win those games. But I love that matchup. And I enjoyed that Notre Dame A&M game, kind of watching that a little bit off to the side. Although, man, A&M, and speaking of which, here's a thought about Connor Wigman, their quarterback. 206 FBS quarterbacks played at least one snap. Wigman had the worst Pro Football Focus offensive grade and passing grade among them. They didn't look any different than when I saw them with their offense the last couple of years with Jimbo. Go ahead, Craig.
We need to make sure that PFS also not the one that was pumping up Connor Wigman this entire
they might have
offseason.
been,
And Donovan Smith, for that matter. We talked about that a bit. I was talking how shocked I was about
Graham Mertz.
I mean, whoever you want, but like there's some guys that got pumped up this offseason that came out of week 1, and you're like, why did they get all of that hype and attention? And Connor Wigman's one of them. Now, hey, one game. Notre Dame's got a good defense, but yeah, he was not good. That was not a good showing by any stretch. And not a good showing for Colin Klein either. I mean, one of the viral moments from that game is Mike Elko on the sideline saying, run the football. And so there's a lot going wrong for A&M's offense on Saturday. Notre Dame had something to do with that, but they'll progress and they'll get better. But that was a tough watch, certainly, if you were an Aggie fan.
Friend of mine, how about this, guys? Riley Leonard is more like Colin Klein than Colin Klein's quarterback. And a friend of mine sent that to me the other night. And it's pretty spot on. Like, if you watch Riley Leonard play, he plays a lot like Colin Klein.
That was something you wonder if that was even an option for Elko to bring him.
I think because of Connor Wigman, he didn't go down the road. And then because he didn't, you know. Well, Riley Leonard also wanted to play at Notre Dame his whole life.
Yeah, and it wasn't like he threw for, he was good.
Here's the difference between Riley Leonard and Connor Wigman the other night. Connor Wigman had a huge role in A&M getting beat. He threw 3 picks. Riley Leonard does not make mistakes. Now, he's not going to wow you with like Jalen Milroe-like plays and athleticism, but he's a really good athlete. He's really tough. He's very smart. He's a great leader. He's very calm. So that whole game, every time you look over at Riley Leonard, he's just like, well, when we get the ball back, like that's where he's going to help you win.
I want to jump to Ashton Jeanty. And bypass a couple of the other things we can use during the show at other times. Ashton Jeanty, Craig Smoak is the president of the Ashton Jeanty fan club and was even before most of you knew how to spell his name. Garrett, can you get a shot of the desk by any chance? There we go. All right. So in his hands is a fake, like EA Sports College Football 24, like the old days when you collected those CDs, right? That was mailed to me from Boise State University because I have a Heisman vote.
It's actually like a video, I think.
Yeah.
It's not a fake thing. There's a
okay.
Yeah, it's a fake disc.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why.
Yeah, I'd never even opened it up. I just took the case. But
so if you could get the one, that's the one I showed on. We had a copy of that when I was at the press box, but they sent that out. 249 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns. Boise State in a back and forth game. He's unbelievable. And we've had him on the show a couple of different times. That's the BJ Raines tweet. And by the way, that's pretty damn cool. I've seen some pretty good things come my way over the years, but that's one of the best right there.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's doing their Heisman campaigning already, and they'll have all their cool ideas. Like what Ed Oliver had the bobblehead statue that one year for Houston, and other people send out like notepads with people on the front. I remember it was like Colin Klein. Now you put his name. He had a
Band-Aid.
It was like a Band-Aid thing, like a Band-Aid tin. So, these SID departments get creative, and Ashton Jeanty is going to need people to make noise for him because he doesn't play for a team that a lot of people watch compared to his competition, but he's very deserving of the attention and of getting the spotlight and of being promoted. And he showed that right out of the gates. I'm not surprised. He's like with Diego Pavia, where I saw him play on Saturday, and I was like, surprised that Vanderbilt's like that much better, but I wasn't surprised to see him have a pretty good game. But Ashton Jeanty's like at a whole different level. I followed him very, very closely last year, and do feel like I was a little bit ahead in terms of understanding like what a player Boise had. But now a lot of people are waking up or have understood that and are going to be following along. And I'm excited to see that because he's a great player, and he is somebody who I think we're going to be hearing a lot about this year. And what a debut. He can catch it out of the backfield as well. But he's just really, really good. And he had an awesome performance. And I'm thrilled for him because I know he was at the Earl Campbell Award banquet last year, did not win it, but was in the running for it. And a lot of people who interacted with him came away very impressed. We've been impressed when we've talked to him on this show. So we're big Ashton Jeanty fans around here and have been for a while. And so welcome aboard the bandwagon. There's plenty of room here.
All right, we got other things to do. RJ Young's going to come back and look ahead to the first week and then into the second full week. Catherine Bartus, State of Idaho Department of Administration, was the one that sent that to me. And thank you so much. We will get to Billy Napier in Florida. Dan Mullen, have fun with that among the Pac-12 or Pac-2 and the Mountain West Conference on something that was a note. The good, the bad, and the ugly from Baylor opening up with a win the way it should be. Now they have Utah coming up, the angry ball of razor blades. So much. JJ Joe, Phil Bennett. who was in Lubbock for that one against ACU. His thoughts as well. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, David Smoak, and this is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, lowt.com. Dr. Kent Petty and his staff can help you become the high-performance man you need to be, maybe used to be. As you get older, your testosterone level can drop. It's part of father time. Some guys don't. They get lucky. They don't have this issue. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men, though, have symptoms of low testosterone. ED, sex drive's not the same. You're lethargic. You even gain a little belly fat. You're pretty good shape, and you exercise and have a pretty good diet. Your focus is not too good. And so what creates that? What causes that? Low testosterone can be the problem. Dr. Petty will set you up with an appointment. Contact him at pettycliniclowt.com. He will pay for it, take care of it. He'll get the blood results, and then if it's too low, give you an option to be a part of increasing your testosterone level. If you want to be the man you once were a few years back or even a year ago, Dr. Kent Petty, pettycliniclowt.com.
Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland at Allen Samuels in Waco. Choose between 2 or 3 rows and save $12,000 or take advantage of 0% financing. Looking for something smaller? Drive home a 2024 Jeep Compass Latitude 4x4 and save $9,760 or take 0% financing and get $3,000. Don't miss out during the Make This the Summer of Jeep event at Allen Samuels in Waco, where we deliver your next adventure. See dealer for details.
Come by. Let's be friends. In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Ghost Hydration is a fully transparent, fully loaded, full-flavored hydration drink that we've all been waiting for. Ghost is caffeine-free with electrolytes, 0 sugar, and low sodium that'll hydrate your body before, during, and after your workout. Consumer loved with authentic flavors, so grab and enjoy a Sour Patch Kids Blue Raspberry and Red Berry, along with the Kiwi Strawberry, Orange Squeeze, or Lemon Lime. Ghost Hydration can truly be used anytime. Remember, it's formulated for sports, but made for life.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
When you work with a bank, you should expect the best of everything. That includes face-to-face personal service and the kind of community banking care that only comes from one neighbor to another. That's exactly what you'll get from the First National Bank of Central Texas, where you will know your banker works just as hard as you do. Once again, that's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Settle for nothing less than the first. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
RJ Young, Fox Sports, joins us. 365 Sports on this Monday, Labor Day Monday. We're here while a lot of people are enjoying a holiday, and RJ decided to join us as well on Zoom, so it's great to see your face, and thank you for your time. RJ, one of the things I came out of the weekend, even though there were a handful of games last weekend, is how much I love the sport, how much it's just great that it was a full weekend with a lot of what were highly anticipated games.
And we're not done yet, which is, I think, the best part of this. I always love the Labor Day weekend because it is the feature for our sport. It's the last time that we're going to play college football without any NFL on Sundays. And we're always going to have these outstanding games, starting with week 0, going into week 1. We had a really great one with USC and LSU, which I was wondering about, because that's the marquee game on Sunday. It's the one we're all watching, and it lived up to its billing, to say nothing of some outstanding football that was played on Saturday. My goodness, I get to see an Iowa team that put up more points than an Oregon team. And I'm going to have so much fun talking about that as we head into this all-important week where we're going to see Texas, Michigan, Baylor, Utah. I mean, Nebraska, Colorado. I'm fired up.
Yeah, RJ, I thought I'd maybe entered into a different timeline with Oregon and Iowa flipping things there. You're one of my favorite ones to watch because you have great opinions on things. I'm curious. So Dabo Swinney has gotten a lot of heat for not using the transfer portal, and that certainly was a part of why they lost to Georgia the other day, and a large part of it. But the other thing I think that is evident, that if he's doubling down on high school recruiting, the kids he's recruiting out of high school seem like they're well behind the kids that Georgia are recruiting out of high school too.
Well, it's also Georgia getting the pick of the litter here. Like, that's kind of what it means. Like, I remember Nick Saban saying this. He would fear Georgia. When we would talk about what he was doing at Alabama, he'd say, I don't know, man, if somebody gets figured out at Georgia, that's a monster. And you know what? The guy that he was raising up, his greatest assistant of all time, has taken over that mantle. And if you grow up in the state of Georgia and they don't pluck you, it ain't because you ain't any good. It's simply because they're already full. They get to throw guys in there like Ellis Robinson IV and KJ Bolden just because they can, in addition to guys like Malachi Starks, who was another outstanding do-everything athlete from the state of Georgia. Meanwhile, with Clemson, I think it's more about who he's getting and how quickly he wants to play them. And frankly, this might be the first time that he's missed on quarterback ever. I mean, I'm really thinking about this hard. And I know how people kind of felt about Chase Bryce, but the idea that you get to bring Trevor Lawrence in there to replace a Kelly Bryant who had taken you to a college football playoff, what Taj Boyd has meant, generational talents like Deshaun Watson, Cade Klubnik has a lot to figure out for me. Like, I know that he was a 5-star coming out of Texas, and his claim to fame is leading Austin Westlake to a win in the state championship against Quinn Ewers and South Lake Carroll, but it starts there for me. And then coordinators, man, like, the thing that people seem to miss about Clemson is not necessarily the transfer portal or even the players. It's the staff. He had been able to raise up guys on his staff to be play callers on his staff and continue to do that. And with Brent Venables at Oklahoma, we got Tony up at Virginia, saw Just Scott go to South Florida. I was thinking that Brandon Streeter was going to be that guy. And when he decided to replace him with Garrett Riley, okay, then Brandon Streeter goes to Georgia, where he's an analyst. And Garrett Riley has scored all of 10 points in 2 games against the Georgia Bulldogs. I don't think that's a coincidence.
RJ, a great one last night, LSU and USC, and just so many storylines from a couple of head coaches who receive a lot of criticism, but also have won a lot of games, a couple of young quarterbacks, and SEC versus Big Ten. I could go on and on. What stood out to you from USC LSU last night?
Miller Moss is a guy. You know, it's one of these things where you're betting on Lincoln Riley more than you're on Miller Moss. Saw that guy lose a job to Jackson Dart, who's pretty damn good. He's at Ole Miss. Saw that guy lose a job to Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy winner, #1 overall pick. And then we get to see Miller Moss go into the Holiday Bowl and light it up and run off anybody that was going to transfer in there, except Jaden Mayava, who was pretty damn good at UNLV before he decided to make the leap there. But this is a guy that saw it. He was spinning it. He was throwing it in the face of an oncoming rush. He looked good operating. On the other side, same thing is true of Garrett Nussmeier, man. Like, I've been watching Garrett Nussmeier since he was very small, because Doug Nussmeier was obviously not just the coordinator for Alabama, but he had done some work with Dallas Cowboys, and I'm a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. So I'm watching Garrett grow up, and he's absolutely spinning it. There were a couple of instances for both of them that I think are going to be growing pains. But as far as guys that are replacing Heisman winners and guys that are coming to programs that expect to compete for national championships, I was impressed. I don't know how you couldn't be. Both of them were efficient. Both of them threw for over 300 yards. Both of them had an opportunity to try to win this thing late. It just broke for USC in a way that it didn't break for LSU.
You know, the Big 12, as you know, RJ, in the day, once had 50 to 45 scores. Of course, they've changed quite a bit. A lot of great running backs in the conference. But for Teteroa McMillan to be able, in his first ever legitimate Big 12 game, have the second highest receiving yards total in that conference's history says quite a bit. Your thoughts about what he and Fafita did? Had to survive, but what they put on the show they did.
Well, surviving is 61-39. So let's start there. It ain't been Montana. It ain't been New Mexico's first 2 weeks, they wouldn't love these, right? They put money in the bag against Montana State. And then they take this really embarrassing L to Arizona. But when you got Tedero and McMillan, you're just going to throw him the rock. And you got Noah Fafita who's going, I got one job. I'm going to throw it to that guy. If you can stop him, great. That's going to stop us. But when that man is going for over 300 yards receiving, the first 300-yard receiver since Jackson Smith and Jigba did this to Utah in the 2022 Rose Bowl, I mean, that's what it is. I remember when we were talking about Colorado joining the conference along with Arizona, and people were telling me that Travis Hunter is one of the better wide receivers in the league. And I'm going, I don't know, man. I think I got 5 guys that I would want before I want him at wide receiver, and he is one of them. I don't know what you're going to do with that guy in the rest of Big 12 play, because it's not as if people aren't bracketing him. It's not as if people aren't double covering him. And it's not as if Noah Fafita is unafraid to throw into that traffic. He's just got a guy that can go up and get it. I'm very excited to see what Arizona can do with an offense that is going to score a lot of points.
What were your thoughts on Colorado and North Dakota State? They're better, like at certain things, but they still look like they're going to be finesse first, and that maybe they're not, the meat and potatoes isn't quite there yet.
I'm not sure that it's finesse first so much as it's high school football, right? It's,
okay. Yeah.
I've got a couple of players that are better than your players, and I'm going to trust them to go win football games for me. I mean, when you look at this team, it's Shedeur Sanders, it's Travis Hunter, and it's Jimmy Horn Jr. So it's 2 wideouts and a quarterback. They still can't really block for him, but he's good enough to make it work. He's a hardy dude, and frankly, he's performing like I would expect a first-round draft pick, a quarterback, to perform with a line that isn't great, right? They still can't run the football. They still can't stop the run. And North Dakota State probably gave them more than they wanted. And I look at it this way. Oklahoma State dispatched number 1. South Dakota State was on a 29-game winning streak with a quarterback that also probably gets drafted in the NFL, and Mark Gronowski. 44-20. I know they gave up a bunch passing and a bunch rushing, but they kept a lid on the end zone. Colorado couldn't really do that. They were in a ball game, losing at halftime to North Dakota State. That does not bode well, right? I'm also going, you got a guy that's playing both ways, and he is fantastic. I love Travis Hunter. We all do. But you're asking that man to play 100 snaps in 12 games. I don't know that you're going to hold up. I don't care how much rest you get. That's just, we don't do that anymore because we know what kind of toll it's going to take on his body, to let alone say what his NFL career is going to look like. I think when they get a chance to play Nebraska, perhaps we're going to get to see another version of what we saw last week, which could be fun. I mean, Dylan Raiola can spin it, but the thing that I want to say about Shedeur that I think doesn't get enough credit, especially as we're in Big 12 country, there have been just 2 quarterbacks the last 20 years in FBS that have started their season openers with 400 yards and 4 TDs in back-to-back seasons. One of them is Shedeur Sanders. The other one is Patrick Mahomes. Anytime you're in the same company as Patrick Mahomes, you're pretty damn good.
Yeah, Shedeur's the real deal. I can't stand it when people try to knock him down for other reasons, and his play is fantastic. So I'm with, and I've never quite heard the high school analogy, but that is such a perfect a way to talk about Colorado. I feel like that's a great analogy there. So Michigan and Texas this weekend. Texas cruises, look really good against Colorado State. Didn't have to sweat that one. Michigan, on the other hand, they got some questions, RJ, starting at quarterback. What do you think? I mean, they're dogs at home to Texas. How are you feeling about the Wolverines coming out of week 1 and now what they face in week 2?
They better show me something that they didn't against Fresno State. I'm telling you that right away. I was not impressed. You're 16-10 in a ball game with the Bulldogs at home at night in a stadium as whole as 110,000 screaming Michigan Wolverine fans. You ought to win that one by name the number. Instead, you need a pick 6 to really put them out of reach. And it's one thing to talk about the quarterback play, right? Davis Warren being a starter. I don't care who talks to you about it out of Michigan. That surprises me. Alex Orji was supposed to be the guy. We know that because he was in the J.J. McCarthy spot last year that J.J. McCarthy was in when Cade McNamara was starting quarterback at Michigan. But knowing that you can't trust him to throw the ball where it needs to go, that's a red flag. Davis Warren does not have the athleticism that Alex Orji has. And he wasn't particularly efficient throwing the ball either. Now, on top of all of that, that ain't what Michigan has been built around in the Harbaugh era and what Sharon Moore is selling. We're going to run the football. We're going to play sound defense. They played sound enough defense, but I saw Will Johnson get cooked as much as I saw him making plays. That still isn't the thing that concerns me. The thing that concerns me is Donovan Edwards has not done diddly squat since he got to Michigan in the regular season. We're talking about a great game against Ohio State, so that's one. And then we're talking about really showing out in Big Ten championship games and in the college football playoff. But you got to get to that spot this year. And he's supposed to be the alpha in that backfield, quarterback or otherwise. I want to see that guy go at Texas's chest and put up the kind of numbers that he did against Washington. Because what you can't do if you are Michigan is lose to the team that lost to the team that you beat to win the national championship. Other thing I'm looking forward to, and this is Texas fans, please do me a favor on this one. Okay, I know I'm from Oklahoma, but do me a favor. I need you to go and find a photo of Bill Engvall, and I need you to put it on posters and on flyers and just hand them out to Michigan fans. And when they ask you, just tell them, here's your sign. You ain't got to steal anything.
Oh, my God. I absolutely love it. Your thoughts about Georgia? We knew they were good. They reiterated that emphatically with what they did to Clemson. But, my goodness, it was not even close. And I know there's a lot about what Dabo doesn't do in the transfer portal. But won't Georgia do this to a lot of people?
I think so, but it's who they did it to and it's how they did it. Like the way I look at this is my preseason top 25 had Ohio State at 1 and Georgia at 2. We'd all heard about what Ohio State had put together in the transfer portal and what that roster looks like. And then you add Chip Kelly to this and you can understand what they feel they have and what they're chasing. National championship. They need to win on November 30th against the Wolverines and they need to win the national championship. And then I watched Georgia take apart Clemson. I absolutely dismantled them. They were never in that ball game, and they were never going to have a chance to be in that ball game. I did not expect that level of dominance from the Georgia Bulldogs. For instance, Ohio State beats Akron 52-6 at home, but they trailed Akron 3-0. Akron got more in common with an FCS opponent than it does the Buckeyes. Meanwhile, Georgia takes on a top 15 Clemson team that is expected to compete for the ACC title and throttles them. Takes them by the neck and stays on top of them, just sitting on them, saying, we're going to do what we want to you. We don't need Trevor Etienne to beat you. It's okay. We don't need everybody to be healthy to go after your chest. We're just going to go right through you like we do everybody else. And they have won 43 of their last 45. And guys, the 2 losses are to Nick Saban's Alabama. And guess who ain't at Alabama anymore? They're wildly impressive to me. So I'm going to take the stance of until somebody beats Georgia, going to just go ahead and say that Georgia's the number 1 team in the country.
Unbelievably dominant.
The Miami-Florida game was really interesting to me in a lot of regards, RJ, in that Cam Ward looks like he might have flipped the ACC, that decision of him going to Miami instead of FSU might have put Miami in the driver's seat. Now, we got to see if Mario Cristobal can get out of his own way in the close games, but Miami appears on the way up, and Billy Napier doesn't have a lot going on there. Does he make it through 6-7 games at Florida if this is what they are?
Well, the buyout for Billy Napier is $26 million, but that's a percentage based on how much is left to play and how many more on their contract. We saw what Texas A&M did with Jimbo Fisher. They waited for him to win a game, and then they decided to bounce him because it was going to work out better for their finances. I think with Florida, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because that schedule was already a monster. And you were already going to be up against it. But the thing about Miami that I find interesting, especially knowing what Mario Cristobal does with clock management, not unlike Lincoln Riley. He treats clock management like the clock is broken. But he might not need to actually manage the clock if he's got a guy like Cam Ward who can sling it. Just like Woody Marks called game last night against LSU to save Lincoln Riley's bacon. We're talking about Cam Ward going, nah, coach, I got it. I'm going to put it out of reach. We're going to go to the swamp. We're going to gator chomp on them. I'm going to put up 385 in my debut, and then I'm going to throw the ultimate shade. I'm going to tell you that Coliseum in LA is louder than Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. Guys, church mouses. That's what they got at the Coliseum. It's never full. When is it ever full? And yet this dude is chirping. I'm with it. Other thing about the Miami part, SEC, they needed a win because Vanderbilt went and got one against Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
So what are we going to tell about the ACC if Miami didn't win this football game?
Yeah, no question about it. By the way, and then not only that, but after the game, the Miami football players were talking to the recruits who were there as a guest of Florida. I mean, it's like going into the house and stealing somebody, right? It was man.
That's what we're doing now, though, guys. Like I was thinking about it this way. I did I did my Ultimate 134 preseason rankings, and then I followed up with my top 100 superstars at Fox Sports. Just who are the stars in our sport that play this game? And the way that one of my editors put it was like, oh my goodness, RJ, you're telling me who we're actually going to be bidding on in the portal next year, because that's what's going to happen. If DJ Lagway does not start against Samford, or if you find a way to put Graham Mertz back there, what do you think is going to happen to your 5-star number 1 overall quarterback from the 2024 class? Is it possible he looks at Cam Ward leaving and going, I don't know, man, Miami looks like a good spot for me. So those conversations have some merit.
No question. And he might end up back near his home at A&M the way they looked at offense. Hey, RJ, great segment. Love the passion. And I'm glad we were able to make this happen. And I'll be back in touch with you. We appreciate you very much for being a part of the show. And good luck with what you do the rest of the way.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
Man, that was a great segment. Appreciate that from all angles, from national to players to the performances to those who, of course, had themselves a big hangover from what happened over the weekend. All right, when we come back, we're going to look at the Big 12 and look at 4 different schools among the 16. We started this last week. It was Craig's idea. It's 4 schools at a time. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We'll look ahead and also look back. We'll do that next. We appreciate your time as always, and this is 365 Sports. The Baylor Club. Over the weekend, they had their big tailgate. They have that big, beautiful facility that, of course, is inside of McLean Stadium. They're taking the day off, relaxing like a lot of people would be anyway because it's Labor Day, but it's a Monday after a full-fledged weekend. And they had more memberships that added to what they already had. The Baylor Club enjoying exclusive benefits, including access to premium dining, social events, networking opportunities with fellow members. Breathtaking views of McLean Stadium, the Brazos River, and right across, if you're looking west outside McLean Stadium from the Baylor Club, you can see the Foster Pavilion, where, of course, men's and women's basketball played. Elegant spaces, top-notch service for weddings, corporate meetings, and social gatherings, promising an unforgettable dining experience because they savor the taste you can of culinary excellence, diverse menu crafted by award-winning chefs. And you have a chance, if you want, like I mentioned earlier about that networking, have business meetings, meet a client, meet a possible sponsor there. They have rooms that are kind of offset and separated for you to have some peace and quiet. Mike Mosel, the general manager, the Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium, just off I-35 in Waco.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year. It's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's football and tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, season these marinades, sauces. Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate muscle, brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select Choice and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue, cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
All right, it's Pod 2 Day. 4 different pods, 4 different 4-group teams. And we'll change them up each week, so it's not going to be always like these 4 on a Monday. It can kind of get stale, although it's information that we're here to do. But today, Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa State, and West Virginia. I don't even have the schedule for this week. I have it in front of me. But let's start with this. KU, Jalen Daniels, they played Thursday night and won. Kansas State took care of their business. Avery Johnson was pretty good. They won. The running game was okay. And then Iowa State, of course, took care of their business. West Virginia, of course, was we mentioned them already. Among those 4 teams, Craig, your thoughts about what you saw from any of them that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, for Kansas, it was just seeing Jalen Daniels healthy as much as anything else. Seeing Jeff Grimes' offense in action for the very first time. I thought that they, passed the test with flying colors. Interesting to have the atmosphere of, being in the middle of these stadium renovations and having to play away from home. So to have like the smaller setup was, I just wonder how that's going to play throughout the year, if like that matters at all or not. Yeah. But you know what? It was great to see Jalen Daniels. I mean, first and foremost, great to see him being able to do his thing. Didn't do too much, didn't get crazy with it, didn't need to, but they did what they needed to do to get a win and get out of there and feel like he passed the test. So now we don't have to sit there and go, well, if Jalen Daniels is healthy, now we've seen him. He's played, good to go. K-State, Avery Johnson is a very talented player, but there was a reason and a valid reason why the big criticism and the big question mark around K-State was his ability to pass the football. And I think that's going to be a work in progress, but I think while there is a lot of talent there, that is a work in progress and something he is going to have to get better at. Iowa State, Jalen Knowles, an awesome player. That was a little bit of a struggle, but they got the win and handled what they needed to get done as far as just getting the win in the first game. So that one was a little bit more low scoring and tighter than I expected in terms of the score.
Matt Campbell never blows people out.
No, that's why I'm not like freaking out about it. It was just from what I expected. I just expected them to have a little bit more breathing room when all was said and done. But that's what I anticipated we were going to get from Iowa State. And then West Virginia, extremely disappointing that you were not able to put up a better fight against Penn State. Not surprised you lost. Surprised a little bit in the fashion that you lost. So those are just kind of my quick takes from the first round of games.
K-State, Johnson was 14 of 21, 2 touchdowns and a pick. He didn't run much. He had 3 carries, 37 yards, which is probably, keep him in bubble wrap unless you don't need to. Giddens had a nice night. Edwards had a few carries. They took care of business. They beat UT Martin, which they should. But yet, like you said, it was
a slow start. It was a slower start than anybody thought, but they eventually got it rolling. There are questions, though. Like, there's a reason why you don't just put them at the top of the Big 12 and you go like, yeah, K-State, and anybody who says otherwise is an idiot. It's like, no, Utah looks on paper to be better. Oklahoma State, you put above K-State right now. Now, K-State's at worst probably like 3, maybe 4 if you want to put KU above them. I could hear you out on that. But, yeah, it wasn't the sexiest performance. They struggled a little bit in some areas, and those were areas that I think you thought they might struggle a little bit. So game one, that's kind of what is going to be the case most often.
They got Arizona in 2 weeks at home. That's going to be they have to play at Tulane, but that could be a great game.
I'm curious to see how he, I'm going to sit here and tell you that I think that Avery Johnson will be better, but he's got to be better throwing the ball. Dylan Edwards scored 2 touchdowns in the game.
Yeah.
By the way, 1 rushing and 1 receiving. Kansas only has 1 more game in the Sporting KC. The rest are going to be at Arrowhead. So I'm wondering how.
Just one more. Okay, I thought it was more than one.
Yeah, so they're 2 at Sporting KC. The rest are at Arrowhead. I wonder how Arrowhead though. Like that's a big place. Like
they're not going to fill that every week.
Yeah, you know, like they're so can you bring the energy like you do at Allen Fieldhouse for football at for basketball for football? I don't know, but you couldn't not like what you saw from them, and they had to play about 12% of the ability of Jalen Daniels. They have 2 really good running backs, Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw. They're going to be fine when it comes to offense. Jeff Grimes has the players that make that offense work at Kansas for sure. Iowa State looks like Iowa State. Like they handled their business, but I can.
They lost a couple offensive linemen, though, and I haven't made my rounds as far as like every little update with schools. I think they might miss some time. I haven't double-checked on that, but I know that was definitely a concern coming out of that game for Iowa State was to be down a couple of linemen.
And playing an Iowa team that is going to maul you at the point of attack.
I think we'll get to this next round. But, that was certainly – that was not a sexy game, but it was a win. Yeah. I mean, that's all you needed.
And West Virginia, most disappointing for me of the week. I thought that game was going to be a lot better. Again, not surprised they lost. I picked them to win. But, I mean, again, they're playing Penn State. I just thought that game would be maybe more of a back-and-forth fight than Penn State just absolutely being every single aspect of that team is better than every single aspect of West Virginia's right now.
Yeah, I mean, it remained relatively close there for a quarter and change. But, about that second quarter, it started to get sideways real quick. I love watching Drew Aller, man. I think he's so good. And I think James Franklin's got a really good football team, and that's what gets lost in all of the anger and the frustration. And, I'm seeing a lot of West Virginia fans sniping at each other now because that's how it happens. I mean, that's what happens when your team loses, and especially a big game like that. I even saw our buddy Coos. Saw a little clip of him. He's like, maybe we put too much on this game. It's like, no, man, like that needed to be hyped up. They just didn't play well.
Yeah.
They just didn't hold up their end of the bargain. I don't think it's like a scarlet letter or anything, or, they're not going to be banished to never being able to compete for the playoff as a result of that. But it was definitely not what you thought you were going to get with all the hype surrounding that game.
Would you rather have played Penn State and found out you have a lot of weaknesses maybe you didn't know, or you'd played UT Martin and won 48-7?
Well, they probably would say UT Martin, so they would have been able to celebrate a win because there's a lot of frustration with Neil Brown and just how that game went. But I look at it as this: Penn State could very well be in the playoff. I would not be shocked by that, just based on overreacting to this very first game. They looked really good. And they looked really good and much better than West Virginia on all sides of the football. So that, if anything, is maybe a difference in just the talent levels that you're starting to see across the country. You know what I mean? As far as the portal and NIL and power conferences and things like that. I think it was a wake-up call as to maybe just the disparity in talent is the gap's a little bit farther than you thought. And I think that's the concerning thing for West Virginia fans and maybe even Big 12 fans is like, oh, geez, is the gap starting to get like that to where there's not many matchups we win at this point, especially ones like that. But we'll see. We need to see more of West Virginia. That was a bad first game, but against a really good team. Long way to go, and still an opportunity to go play for something at the end of the season.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's not too early to look at that as far as the talent level and how it's separating, because it's only going to probably separate possibly even more. But KU won, Kansas State won, Iowa State won, West Virginia did not. It's not the end of the world, but there sure was, when you have that kind of atmosphere like you had at Kyle Field, and you have that kind of a buildup for a game, highly anticipated game, and A&M was at least in the game. They just couldn't score, but neither could Notre Dame for the longest of time. West Virginia got beat up in their backyard. They got beat up in their backyard. And,
they did.
And that's got to be the most disappointing part.
I would say that now, granted, different feelings because of where they were given a year ago. West Virginia can still be optimistic about what's ahead, but I would say that two of the loudest and toughest places to play in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium and there in Morgantown were just rendered useless, and they probably felt about the same after the game, and that, like, here's a big moment for us to make a statement, and neither one of them did. It was they were made the statement and not they didn't make it.
Here's the thing to me though, like I didn't pick West Virginia to win, but if I was going to, is the first game of the year. I wouldn't have picked them in week 9 against Penn State, probably.
Yeah. It's
at home. It's all blank canvas. And so because of that, you had maybe more of an advantage, right? And so this was an opportunity, and it was one that was squandered. Penn State was better. There's nothing more to it than that. And if there is, then we'll learn that over the coming weeks and have that confirmed. If it is a Garrett Green problem or a Neil Brown problem or a whatever problem. But for starters, I didn't have West Virginia winning the league anyways. Like, they were very loud, or at least pundits or whoever was very loud about West Virginia's getting disrespected. What about Garrett Green? There's a lot of talk about Garrett Green this offseason. And I think Garrett Green's a fantastic player, but he was not on Saturday. Penn State made him not look like a fantastic player, and he made himself not look like a fantastic player in some ways. So there's a lot of room for improvement. They got to brush that one off and get onto the saddle once again, because there's a long way to go and the season's not over. But yeah, that obviously was a huge missed opportunity, and who knows how many times you get an opportunity to have that amount of eyes on you as you had then. But that's just part of the deal. And now you got to go back to the drawing board.
Well, there's a couple. I don't know why people were thinking that Penn State was vulnerable. I don't think it was that. I think we probably felt a little bit more about West Virginia than what we saw.
Yeah.
Penn State isn't an awful team. Don't know why everyone thought they were vulnerable. Somebody else mentioned that, hey, by the way, Penn State's really pretty good. The problem is they always have to play Ohio State every year.
Here's the deal with that game. It wasn't a disrespect to Penn State. It was, they're both 0-0. It's the first game of the year. It's a madhouse in Morgantown. West Virginia expects they could be pretty good. If Garrett Green's what he's touted to be and is improved from a year ago, you think they have a chance. That's all that it was.
Right.
You thought they had a chance to pull the upset because of the circumstances, and then the ball was rolled out on the field, and it became very clear Penn State was much better regardless of the circumstances, and that's just the way that it was. I mean,
it wasn't
nothing more
like
than
they
that.
came out and just blew it West Virginia.
No, it took a little while.
It took a while, but when they hit that long crossing pattern or that post, and he took off.
It was Neil Brown went for it on 4th down. They got stopped, and then the snowball really got going around that point.
I think his ego got in the way, or his man. You got to.
Or you feel like we can't, field goals won't win this game. We've got to score touchdowns. And in that case, I think that was the wrong call. I think you needed to just get points, and he decided to try to go for the touchdown. And that was just one of a combination of factors that kind of all got that snowball rolling to where early second quarter on, that was all Penn State.
All right, tomorrow, UCF. I'm not done. Okay. I know we'll come back to it. Tomorrow, by the way, somebody asked me, UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU will be in Dallas, by the way, to play SMU this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Houston fans, you have 24 hours to
cleanse,
to just
move on,
to get ready for whatever we have to break down.
Well,
with that.
I don't remember when that game kicked off. I just remember when I got to the press box and I kind of get set up and I looked at it was 24-0. I'm like, oh, damn. And I know we all of us have great respect for Barry Odom and UNLV. We've had them on. We have. But that game, that got out of hand. But we're talking about Houston.
Yeah,
that's for
about Houston
tomorrow. All right. Go ahead.
So the game's this weekend.
Yes. So we have the weekend. There's a couple of games in the Big 12 that'll be kind of fun to watch. Let's start with this one. Kansas State on the road against Tulane.
It's an interesting game, man. Tulane and Josh Summerall's a real deal coach. I think this is not a game where I feel like Kansas State's in upset territory, but I do think they're going to have to be on their P's and Q's. I don't think they're just going to roll in and have Tulane flop over for them. So you hope Avery Johnson's just a step better in the saddle and just continue to get comfortable with him running the show and having to do all the things required of a starting quarterback at this level. There's a lot to like about Kansas State, but this is a step up in competition, no doubt about it. And this will be a nice little test early on for them.
All right, Paul.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be tough. The last week warm-up games and all that stuff that most of these teams, except for West Virginia, had are over. The schedule gets tougher and tougher. Teams like Kansas State and Baylor are the same, where they only have one more non-Big 12 game going, right, for the rest of the year. And so it's going to get real, and it's going to get real fast.
Well, didn't Tulane beat K-State?
A couple years ago.
Yeah, they did a couple years ago. They got a really good back in Darian Mensah. I mean, if you look at the spreads right now, Kansas State's like a 9.5-point favorite. So that says something. I mean, typically, you'd have your early season conference matchups, and Southeast Louisiana, which is who Tulane played last week, be like 52-0. You see those, you just chalk up we'll destroy them. But Tulane's a different animal. And, yeah, they've beaten you. They've beaten you recently, and you've got to respect what John Sumrall's done and respect the talent they have on that roster. And, if you don't, then you could find yourself in some trouble.
You mentioned Mensa. He's a quarterback.
A quarterback. So what I say?
Yeah, that's okay.
What I say?
Running back.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, he, of course, threw for 200 yards in their win. Iowa State and you cannot stop them. You can only hope to contain Iowa's offense in that game will be in Iowa City.
They did that last year in the same game where they scored a bunch scored a bunch of points and then turned around and they were Iowa again. I should their offense theoretically can go nowhere but up, because I don't know if it's humanly possible to see the microscopic levels of offense that could be if they went down. So it will be tough. This is a rivalry. This game honestly never makes sense to me. Like, every time I think Iowa State's got the better team than Iowa, and they'll have guys that are better athletes and all these things, Iowa somehow manages to beat them. Iowa owns this rivalry overall. So in the battle for the Cy-Hawk Trophy, I don't know if I even put this. I think I might have put it on the pick'em for week 2, but I never feel good about picking it.
I think
I did. I got to check.
I hope so, because if it's as unpredictable as you're saying, that's the perfect type of game to put on there. Is one that's so unpredictable. But this one has been mostly dominated by Iowa over the years, but Iowa State has had their moment here and there, and this has been a very tough played game. I mean, regardless of the circumstances. So it's in Hawkeye territory. That's an advantage you give to Iowa. Obviously, I don't know how much that tilts the scales as far as my overall prediction goes, but from everything that I've seen, it tilts it even further in a direction where a lot of the sentiment is that Iowa is the big favorite here. So we'll see. I don't pretend and won't pretend to know a ton about them in terms of how they match up with Iowa State here on a Monday. Getting Kirk Ferentz back, is that good or bad for the offense that he is going to be back this week? I don't really know, but this one's going to be a rock fight. These two teams hate each other. It's always super physical and nasty, and I would expect nothing less. But I think Iowa State's got a good football team, and I think they're good enough to go and win this ball game. But history says that it's going to be a bit of an uphill climb.
47-23. Iowa has the advantage, so 67% or so of the games. Iowa State did win a couple of years ago in a rock fight, 10-7. And then before that, it was in 2014 when they won 20-7. They had a stretch. Iowa State had a really good stretch when they won 5 in a row back at the late 90s and early parts of 2000.
Yeah, but they had a really bad stretch with Matt Campbell up until 2 years ago when he finally was able to get a win where Iowa was just kind of dominating over the last decade. So
I'll fight you, Paul, about their offense. Do you know that I think in that game, did you guys see this note about Iowa's receivers? That they may have had some receivers catch more touchdowns in that game than the leading receiver for catching touchdowns a year ago.
Yeah, probably. I mean, they don't know, they didn't throw the ball. They didn't do it. It was
newsflash. Iowa's offense sucks. It has for a really long time.
It was an affront to football what they were doing.
Yeah, they didn't. Well, it's going to be fun. We'll see. It'll be a good test for Matt Campbell and for Ferentz as well.
Which I hope is a long time from now. But the day that Kirk Ferentz passes on and goes up to the pearly gates and St. Peter says, look, we got some questions. And he's going to be like, oh, did I swear too much? Was I too hard on the kids? He's going to be like, no, look, we had to watch that offense for a really long time, and that was just sinful.
Yeah.
So
there's
some purgatory you're going to have to go back and do.
You got
that was bad.
You could throw a forward pass. West Virginia, perfect time for them. They play Albany. We know that they played Baylor 2-3 years ago. That game's a 5:00 game on ESPN Plus. Albany, of course, has won games where they are, but this is obviously something West Virginia needs.
Yeah, it is. They'll take care of business, and I don't really have much to say. I mean, if there's a lot to say about this game next Monday, then that is a really bad sign for West Virginia, I feel like. Or they had a historic performance where they scored about 200-plus points. But anything in between, I think, would be a little bit more concerning. This is their get-right game after the disappointment of last weekend. Wash your mouth out and move on to the next one and get your first win and stay healthy and flash your skill guys and your talents and have fun on Saturday after not having so much fun this past Saturday. That's all this game is. This is your win that you bought on the schedule. So go handle that.
And they had such an unbelievable atmosphere. We had Ren Baker on Thursday or Friday, and of course, with McAfee donated $1 million to the NIL.
Very cool.
That.
Yeah, in honor
really
of
cool.
his old West Virginia teams, not just from him. That was a very cool gesture and cool to see him involved and out there. And, again, I saw like our buddy Coos and other West Virginia fans who almost like shying away from now trying to get too excited because that was such a bad look. It's like, no, man, just win the next time. That's all there is to it.
If Penn State played all 131 teams, and the Vegas put the odds on those. Now, again, I'll say they would be favored against everybody but like 6 or 8 teams. They're that good.
They're top 10 to start the season. They're really, really good. So, I mean, that's got to be taken into account. And I don't think that anybody was under the impression that West Virginia was a top 10 team either. So this was to be expected to some extent. But they'll be fine this weekend, get some of their confidence back, and like I said, get that first win and move on.
Illinois rolled in their opening game. They will host Kansas. We mentioned what Kansas did with Jalen Daniels and the fact, but they're playing Illinois coming up. That game will be in Champaign. They hammered Eastern Illinois. That's another one of those games that either you win pretty big or maybe there's like some eyeballs that are like, what's going on? Or you play good teams. But Illinois opens up with a 45-0 win. And now Kansas. This ought to be a pretty good game. Can Illinois dictate the tempo or does Kansas?
No, I think Kansas is going to dictate the tempo here. You kind of have differing styles with Brett Bielema and what they do in Illinois compared to Lance Leipold. Now, I think they'll play tough. I think that they will. Luke Altmaier's the quarterback at Illinois now, and he was at Ole Miss before and lost to Baylor in that Sugar Bowl, even though he didn't expect to play in it, which is part of the reason probably why it was, got caught a little off guard there.
And that was like 3 years ago. He's a much different player now than he was back then.
But I expect this to be a nice little game for that offense and getting loose and maybe showing off some of their wide receivers that they're pretty proud of a little bit more. But I think the running game that they'll have between Highshaw and Neal and Daniels will be, what's the difference in most of the Kansas wins this year?
Yeah, I mean, Illinois had a good start. This one is in Champaign, which I do think that matters most of the time. Doesn't always guarantee a win by any means, obviously, but it is notable when you have what I consider is going to be a close competitive game. I still think Kansas wins, but I think it's going to be really tough. I think they're going to have to play well and not make many mistakes on the road against a team that's, comparable in talent level. So I like what Illinois has been doing, but I like what Kansas has been doing a bit more, especially when we didn't see Jalen Daniels run around at all last week. And they're being smart and protecting him, but I think we'll see maybe him let loose a little bit more. And certainly he's got a lot of weapons around him. So I think Kansas wins this game. I don't want to make every game these conference comparisons because I said at the start of the show, like that's just gotten so crazy, but it's a Big Ten opponent. It's a Big 10, Big 12 matchup. So if you're into bragging rights and conference records and things like that, here's a big opportunity for the conference to go get a win over a respectable Big Ten opponent. But it's not going to be a guaranteed thing by any stretch for Lance Leipold and company. They're going to have to play well, and if they're able to go in there and get a W, then that's a great start.
Illinois is a big school. Bielema does a nice job. Sometimes they're a little bit boring the way they go about their business, but Kansas can't go in there and like have a couple of things go wrong early, although they are good enough to come back from any kind of deficit. So those are the 4 teams tomorrow. UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, and also BYU will be a part of the pod. What will be Roman numeral 3. You guys, did you get it when I'm texting you guys by then I put like X1V X?
No, I just tune it out.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
See,
Craig doesn't look at text messages.
No, I do look at text messages. I just sort through them in my brain.
Do you look at when I put in what pod number and I put it in
when
Roman
the joke has been made like 17 times, it's just like I stop. It's like a toddler where you just stop acknowledging it, so it'll finally just go away. So like the pod joke was good like the first couple of days, but we're a week down and it's like it's an inside joke that's not even that funny.
Well, I don't think that's very nice
because it's really just like a very simply explained thing of why the pods are the pods, but you just have this hang up of that we didn't go with the totally erratic combination of teams of like, let's pair UCF with Utah and Baylor and Iowa State. And like this, that's a pod.
Would have been a hell of a segment.
Yeah. Just,
you know what I'm going to do at the end of the year? I'm going to see which pod has the best overall record among the 4 teams.
I think that'd actually be kind of interesting because the reason the way they're set up is it's the 4 Pac schools. Yeah. So that's all came in together. It's the 4 schools that came in the year before that. So they're all together and then had to dice up the other 8 remaining. And those aren't perfect geographically because West Virginia is sort of out there on an island and the closest teams are in those other pods. But yeah, I actually think that would be interesting because one of them's Baylor, TCU, Tech, and Oklahoma State.
Which is kind of some of the originals.
Some of the originals. And I didn't put Houston there to make it all Texas because they came in with the other schools. But yeah, that would actually be kind of interesting.
We've got a break here in about 2 minutes.
I think I'd take Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa State, and West Virginia.
Yeah, with a better overall record. Okay, probably. Real quickly in a couple of minutes, we have to go, and I know that they're a part of the pot on Wednesday. How about Arizona State? How about?
Yeah.
I mean, and again, we don't know how many of these are going to get, but they beat the hell out of Wyoming.
Well, I said this last week. It was very interesting to have all day long Big 12 football, starting at 11 a.m. all the way till what felt like 11 a.m. the following day practically, but no, like 1 a.m. or whatever it ended up being. That was a long Saturday. You had football all day long in pretty much every window. And, yeah, Arizona State and Arizona there, both late night, Big 12 after dark. The Sun Devils were cruising, and Arizona was struggling. You're like, I think I even tweeted, like, I think I had these teams backwards, like just based on the early results. But,
yeah,
obviously Arizona handled themselves over time and pulled away. But the Sun Devils looked good. They looked really, really good. And that game was never in doubt. And look, they dealt with a lot of BS last year. So if Kenny Dillingham's had this time to, I mean, remember last year, right before the season starts, hey guys, you're not going to a bowl game. And I saw some people dismiss that of like, you weren't going to a bowl game anyways, but it's the messaging. It's that your AD comes to you before the season starts. Oh, by the way, even if you guys are pretty good, we're telling you you're not going to a bowl game. Like, how deflating is that? So
we're going to tell you for something that zero of you had anything to do with, and it was totally my fault when it comes to the AD. By the way, you guys are not going to do it. This really hard thing that's going to be hard for you, like, is the goal of you. We're taking that away.
But we want you to go out and give it everything you have.
Yeah. We're going to pop this balloon and then ask you to, go play happy. And I just thought that was so messed up. So with all that BS out of the way, I think Arizona State's got a clear slate and another year under Kenny Dillingham, and not going to go too crazy, but that was a really nice, solid, and impressive first win.
By the way, did you guys see what Blake Shapen did in the opening game against Eastern Kentucky? 15 of 20, 247, 3 touchdowns, ran for 44 and a touchdown. Of course, they blew that game open right off the top.
It helps to have an offensive line.
Yeah.
It helps to have time in the pocket and not be constantly running for your life. It helps to be in an offense that's more suited to your talents. And those are my initial impressions of Blake Shapen. Now, when they play better competition and he has to run around, can he better protect himself and not line himself up to be decapitated on any given run? If so, if he can stay healthy, the young man's got talent. We saw that firsthand, but he couldn't stay healthy, and it wasn't always his fault. I think he's got much better protection in Mississippi State and a much better offensive system to play in. So I was not all that surprised by that in the opener, but obviously the competition is going to ramp up, but good for him.
Yeah, I was happy for him, and I will be. Of the quarterbacks that are out there, Drone struggled, had some good moments. Zeno, we mentioned him on, I guess it was on in the pregame, was good against Alcorn State. And then, of course, there's the BYU game in which Ratloff is the one that started, and Gary Retzloff, that started. Gary Bohannon did not get snaps. Retzloff threw for 348, 3 touchdowns. Okay, when we come back, I have Garrett. Do you have the 2 videos of the defensive tackle from Lexington High School?
I have the one, yes.
Okay. Do you have the one that's the longest one?
Yeah, I got the longest one.
All right. Listen, this is like, we're going to use this in the high school podcast that I record with Garrett on Wednesday mornings. But if you just want an unbelievable play, like the one-handed catch from the USC receiver, the interception in whatever game that was down the field, that was another one-handed Who was that? Who was the one that made that? The interception. It was a game that got a lot of publicity.
I mean, Malachi Starks had a beautiful one.
Well, the Georgia, that was a dominant. But, all right, when we come back, I'm going to throw this video up that I got from Lexington High School, who's in Texas. We'll do that in the next segment, and we're not done. We're going to look back at maybe a note or two with Baylor in their win as expected, but it was nice if you're a Baylor fan to be able to win a game and see a lot of faces and the new faces too. Craig does a good, the bad, and the ugly that is after any kind of a game, a little bit of that and more. This is 365 Sports. Texas Beef House. Paul and Jack were able to win their ground hamburger. Was it patties or ground hamburger, Paul?
It was ground because we wanted to, between the two of us, we have plans that are not just going to limit us to hamburgers.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, you're going to have that. So that's on their way. Speaking of Texas Beef House, Scotty Bankale, Scotty B, won the Texas Beef House Week 1 Pick'em. And he, in fact, I just sent an email to Samantha Duvall, and she will be in touch with Scotty B thanks to the $100 gift card from Kim Coulter. And so we start now week 2. Paul, we got to put the link up and get that up for the games already up. Okay, good, for week number 2. Their next live auction will be September the 18th and 19th. It will be back to steaks. There's also some other product that are included in the lots available. I won a couple of times ago. Others have won. You maybe have won. And so Texas Beef House, farm-raised, homegrown Wagyu beef. The Angus cattle right there on the Duvall family on one of their ranches, and I've been there. It is fantastic. For more information and also to get ready for the next live auction, go to texasbeefhouse.com or bidonbeef.com.
At Genco, our goal is to build long-lasting relationships while providing complete financial solutions for each step of life's journey. Our members enjoy fewer fees, lower rates on loans of all types, and higher yields on a wide variety of savings options. That's just a small part of the credit union difference. Visit Genco online, on Facebook, or come by one of our 5 locations today. Apply online for membership. Genco FCU, NCUA Equal Housing Lender.
My money, my future, my credit union. Genco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
By the way, we mentioned that Craig has that good, the bad, the ugly following a Baylor game. Also does some rapid reactions. That Jack McKenzie and Emery Winter were up very late and putting together a kind of a summary video that was up, and also put it up on Twitter. Great stuff from them. And Levi wrote the game story. So we were everywhere. And thanks to those of you who joined us in the postgame show that night too. Huh?
We got JJ.
Well, JJ is former Baylor quarterback and Baylor radio. Can he see actually the show that's on the air when we have him?
Yeah.
So here's a video. JJ will love this too. Gabe Turner. I got this from Lexington football coach Jace Robinson. He had 4 tackles behind the line of scrimmage. But watch this video of a nose tackle and how far he ran after he picked off the pass and what or who tried to stop him. Lexington High School sent me this video against Mullen, by the way. And Mullen's got a team with a bunch of great speed. Watch this play. Picked it off in the middle. 1 tackle. Now, wait a minute. Can he get another attempt? This is from the quarterback who just fell off him like water on a duck's back. A defensive tackle, a nose tackle, Gabe Turner, who ran picks back 74 and 27 yards. And congratulations to him.
Living the dream.
Living the dream, like scoring a touchdown as a running back or a receiver. There was a video over the weekend about a quarterback, a lineman who threw a pass on a flea flicker. JJ, could you have brought him down?
At all. That's a big gentleman. I don't know how. I can see why the quarterback just kind of got slung out, man. That's a big dude.
I mean, and he could run. He could run too. All right. Thank you for your time. JJ Joe, Baylor radio color analyst, joins us. What were your overall impressions of DeQuan Finn, who flashed what he can do, but there's also that, the concern of him trying to maybe throw it a few times when he shouldn't?
Yeah, I think if you, I think he went to coach. I think I heard Coach Aranda say in the postgame that he told Coach Aranda he could play much better, and Coach Aranda told him, "Don't worry about it, you will." So, and I believe that's how we all felt. I believe that early it was great to see his feet, the mobility that he brought to the table with the run. He kept some plays alive, missed some throws. I think you're going to have that. We have to remember it is a new offense for him, and sometimes you're going to miss, but I do believe that he'll get better. So I think for him, if you asked him, he had probably an average day, not a great day, not a bad day, but a good average day that allowed Baylor to win like they should have. I think the good news is everybody, I think, got out of that game healthy, Smoak, and they felt like they left a lot of meat on the bone. So you're glad you win, 38-3 or 42-3, whatever it was, 45-3, and you feel like you left a lot on the bone.
How did that feel from your vantage point to see a Baylor quarterback take off on the run like that and hit the big play with his feet?
I'll tell you, I really liked it. It really felt like to me like this is part of what we need. Not everything you need, but part of what we need to have defenses have to worry about a quarterback that if you, for some reason, decide to keep taking the runner or for whatever reason you miss him, he can go the distance. And that's the big thing, the difference between 10 yards, 12 yards, what we could get probably last year, to a young man that can go, 30, 40, 50 yards is huge. Now, I think I said this, when we talked, I think a couple weeks ago, I really believe for this offense to be effective, DeQuan Finn's going to have to throw for close to 3,000 yards because that means that he's executing Coach Spavital's offense at a high level.
JJ, do you think that he's going to have to maybe learn by doing that when he plays Utah or anybody else in the Big 12, that sometimes the things he got away with in the MAC or he got away with against Tarleton, you're not going to do? Or is this something that they're going to have to hammer in before that even happens against Utah this week?
Well, I think, he's played against some big-time opponents. So he's played against Ohio State. He's played against some other Power 5 teams and played pretty good football. So I think he has an idea of what he can and can't do. I believe in this offense. That's the big thing that the coaches have to figure out. Coach Spavital has to figure out. DeQuan has to figure out what package of plays of the whole offense do we feel DeQuan can execute at a high level. It won't be the same package maybe Sawyer operates at a high level. So once they find that package and he gets comfortable, in competition with this set of receivers, I think he'll be fine. But I think he can pretty much do what he's done before. It's just like anything. It's like, once you start with a new offense on a new team in a new conference, you'll have to figure out, exactly, kind of what you can and can't do. But I think he has an idea.
Does this team have more team speed I don't know about on defense yet, but do you think they have more team speed when it comes to offense?
I'll tell you what, I mean, I'm not sure if they have more speed. I think they do. It just looks like they look faster.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I wrote this in one of the articles of, Ashley sent me for Sick and 365 that, the one thing that I'm looking for defensively is up the middle. I mean, does our nose, our Mike, and our safety, do they play fast? Do they clean up like we've had when we had really good teams? Offensively, I think we have guys who can just run. I mean, you got to have them. We got Monterey. We got Ashton. I think the Josh Bell, I liked his speed. We know Tevin Reese has speed. So we have speed out there. But defensively, it looked to me like we were playing the game at a little notch and a half to 2 notches faster than we played pretty much at any time last year.
JJ, what were your thoughts on the offensive line, the run game? I mean, we knew going in, right? We knew going in kind of what the big concern might be, and I think that's still the concern coming out of it. But what did you take away from what you were actually able to see?
I think, it's a work in progress. These guys, for the most part, I believe maybe Beausoleil, maybe we have in Colton, maybe it's 2 that actually played quite a bit last year. A lot of new guys. We didn't move guys as much as I would love to see us move guys. But that doesn't mean, in the first game, sometimes teams can do some stuff or have some stuff packaged that, it's a little different for you. So I'm not gonna get too alarmed. I wanted to see us run a little bit better. But overall, I think it's a fine start, not a great start, but at least one where I think that it feels like to me that this line has more potential to improve over the next week to 3 to 4 or 5 weeks than maybe we had last year.
Now the jump up in competition is stiff. I mean, they're probably playing what is the probable Big 12. I mean, voted on by the media, the Big 12 favorite in Utah at a very lethal place to play. One of the things you can say going in is they did well against Utah last year and were kind of maybe a quarterback injury away from winning that. And 2, no matter what you say about last year, they did not do what they did to Charles, or what you say about Tarleton. They didn't do this to anybody last year. So they actually have a little bit of momentum going in.
I'm 100% with you on that one. The great news is that we won a game that we're supposed to win. We blew the team out. It was 28-0. And really, if Quan doesn't throw that that interception down at the goal line, we're up 35-0. And this game probably ends up 56 to probably 3. But it didn't. We left some meat on the bone. But I'll tell you, going into this week, it'll be a level that they haven't experienced in since last year, right? Where even Utah's team last year was handicapped. Remember, Cam Rising didn't play. He didn't play at all last year. So they're going to have a quarterback that can complete passes, unlike Tarleton State struggled to complete passes. They're going to have some guys up front that can manhandle you. They're going to have some players that can actually, play through some things. So it'll be a big step up. But I'll say this, and I don't think Baylor fans need to be too concerned. I believe, and you heard this all the time, the teams do make one of the biggest jumps between week 1 and week 2 because there is just an adjustment to getting back and getting used to playing at that level of intensity again. And then I think for the players, they know that, hey, look, we can't get away with any of the stuff we got away with this past week.
JJ, when you go in the transfer portal, and Baylor, of course, probably didn't do it enough after they had that great year in 21, but when you go in the portal and your first touchdown is the guy you brought in with an NIL from Toledo, The first touchdown after the next touchdown was Finn, obviously, to Ashton Hawkins, who was a transfer. Keaton Thomas, a transfer. Trigg caught it. I mean, how much does that give you a lift?
It's huge. I mean, I was seeing the same thing you guys were seeing, Smoak, that I think our first 3 touchdowns or something were by guys that were all new to the program, came in through the transfer portal. And I just think that's the new age. I think it's the new age of you got to go find talent to help fill in some roster holes, and you got to hit on them. We don't know 100% have we hit on these guys. It looks at least the start of the season makes it look like, hey man, this is gonna pay off for us, and we hope that they keep improving. But I was watching, guys, Clemson play Georgia. Not that Georgia's gonna make a lot of people look bad, but Clemson and Dabo Swinney, they were where Georgia is, and he just refuses at this point to use a transfer portal. And in this day and age in football, Baylor's involved in it, UT, everybody's involved in it, and I think for the most part, it's just the new reality.
Yeah, he's like the one guy without a cell phone at this point. In that regard, JJ, watching I'm going to go back to the run game a little bit. They last week, they rolled out about everybody. Where do you think that the rotation will be when it comes to these are the guys that we're going to need to rely on to get first downs and drive this offense? Because, they you can't just roll out 5 running backs every week. It's just not how it works.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think that'll be probably the first 4 weeks of the season. They'll figure that out. They have a pretty good idea, but you got to get in game action and see what guys do in the game. I believe Dominic Richardson, if it was a conference game, he could have played. I think from what I hear, he didn't play. They held him out just out of precaution. Of course, a really talented freshman didn't play. He was out too. So I think when we get there, you have 4 guys that can really probably play D1 Power 5 football. And I think it's going to be one of those things where the hot hand gets the love. If you're running well and you're effective, the top 2 guys, maybe 3, you're going to get rolling that day. And if you're not, you're probably going to miss a little playing time.
JJ, I know it's not until next week when Baylor hosts Air Force, but they're going to honor that 74 championship team, the Miracle on the Brazos, and there are a lot of promotions on that. Where were you when that game was played? Do you remember much about that?
Man, I wasn't. I mean, Smoak, I was probably about 4. I think when that thing depends on when it was, but I mean, of course, I've heard a ton of stories. Not only am I on the team with Ricky, who's on that team, but Coach Taft was my coach when I was there. And man, we heard all the stories about the worm and everything else, man.
Oh yeah.
So I know a ton about it, but I didn't see it.
I didn't. Well, you know what? I try to make you older than you are. I mean, I like
it's the gray, Smoak. It's the
gray. All right. Paul brought up Utah, and it's a different level, and it's also a crazy good place to play. What Whittingham does that's kind of what impressed me last year. Even though they didn't play well in the first half, the quarterback was struggling. They don't stop doing, or they don't stop being who they are. They just keep kind of grinding. On a road trip, you've been on a road trip at a really good place. What are some things that must be done to make sure you're prepared for this atmosphere?
Well, I mean, first of all, before the game, I mean, all that goes without saying. I mean, I think we have enough guys that have been on the road before. Quite a few upperclassmen on this team that they know what it means to go on the road now. But I'll tell you this: I mean, what right up front is that we have to play a clean game. And clean means it doesn't mean you're going to have the 17 explosive plays. It just means, number one, you're not going to turn the ball over. DeQuan Finn can't make those decisions with the ball against Utah. Just can't do it. It also means that all the negative yardage plays, those kind of plays, you have to minimize them. And then there's going to come an opportunity where you make a play, and you're going to have a guy like an Ashton Hawkins, because there's not going to be a lot of blown assignments on their side, Smoak. You're going to have to just make a play. And Ashton Hawkins made one when he was well covered. DeQuan made a guy miss. And you're going to need a runner. You're going to need a Reese or Pendergrass or hopefully Richardson. Somebody has to make some guys miss and make a play. And the only way you beat a top 15 team on the road, besides playing clean, is that you need some people on both sides of your ball. They go make a play and they go get it. And then if they do that, you'll be in position to at least get to the fourth quarter and have a chance to win. And that's all you can ask for.
Thank you, buddy. Great to have you on. You got another one?
I just want to have a point of comparison. So, JJ, you were an option quarterback. You used to boogie. You could get out there and make some big plays in the run game. If you were running along, like if we did the thing with you and DeQuan Finn side by side on that long touchdown run,
oh my!
How close to the strides would you have been?
Man, I tell you, hey, the good news about it is I tried my best not to run much, but that side by side thing, I wouldn't even want to see it because I think I would lose quite in the 30 yards. I'd probably lose 4 or 5 yards, and that's not good.
Yeah. Yeah. And when he took off in that zone read, whatever, I mean, it was like, that's part of why you brought him in. And you just hope that he tightens up a little bit and protects the football, which is the number one thing for a quarterback to do. JJ, great to see you.
Thanks, guys.
Great to have you on. Thank you very much. JJ Joe, Baylor radio color analyst, with us every other week right here on 365 Sports. And so good to have him on the show. In the 5 o'clock hour, Phil Bennett, who was at the Texas Tech ACU game. His thoughts on not just that, but many things over the weekend. And then also after that, we'll also get to Paul's top 5 a little bit later on around the corner. David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak. Garrett Ross is running the mothership, and this is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, Ted Teague, and the dealership as they are closing out, of course, the weekend that is when it comes to what they have during Labor Day and some of the specials. And now there's about to be even more available from Alan Samuels for the upcoming week as we start the month of September, which is kind of hard to even imagine. Here's what Ted Teague sent me. All the new 2024 Jeep Wrangler 4xe up to 49 miles per gallon, 370 miles of estimated total driving range, 7,500 instant tax credit that can be used as a discount when you lease. Also, the Rubicon 4xe, the lease is only $3,000 and $589 per month. Grand Cherokee 4xe, the lease only for $3,000 up front and $589 a month. Football season, looking for the ultimate tailgate vehicle? Look no further. The Ram 1500 Crew Cab boasts an amazing 68.5 cubic feet of interior cargo ability. So you can pack that baby up in the bed or also more. The Ram Box Cargo management system, which can hold up to 124 cans. Wonder what that would be for. That has a drain plug, by the way, and ice and water for you to keep your cold cans, soft drinks and cold beverages cold during the day and even on the way to the tailgate and during so. They have a lot of specials right now. Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Ted Teague, the general manager, CEO, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Get ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with the Baylor Club membership today.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
I mentioned some of what, of course, we do, and a lot of people that put their work into game day on Sikkim365.com with the pregame. Richard Carr Motors, who also sponsored the JJ Joe segment, then the post game, and then all of the various ways that we cover it, whether it's a home or also road game. And we appreciate everybody that puts in the time because there's a bunch going on. Phil Bennett, longtime college football coach and a great friend of the show, was in Lubbock over the weekend. And thanks for the time, Coach, with Paul and Craig and me. I don't think that's what you expected to see when you went to that game on Saturday.
You know, Joe and I were talking before the game, and one of the things he mentioned, he said, you know, Phil, anybody can beat anybody, which I said after 50 years involved in, I said, you're absolutely right. And he said, I told our guys, they were aware, and he was concerned, you know, the great crowd, and he was concerned about, you know, them playing ACU, you know, a 1AA team. And I'll tell you something, they did, this is crazy. Reverse portal action. A wide receiver, a running back, a quarterback, a tight end, were all at Tech and left. And they all played very well against Tech. They were kids that left their program, and one of them had gone to North Texas, then at ACU. And you'll remember McIver's dad, who I happened to see.
Yep.
Yeah, I happened to see him pregame. Unfortunately, he just had a stroke, and he's coming back from it. But his son really played well. It was, and you know, there were some plays. Some people say, well, it's fluke. Some of their guys really played well and caught the ball, and you know, Tech had some good coverage, and they still made plays. So I still think you'll see Tech go to Washington State, and they'll play better.
I want to ask you a question about how it ended. I know if you're like the underdog, there's a time when you say, what the hell, let's go for the throat, especially if you're getting worn down. But was that the time to go for 2, in your opinion?
Yeah. They, you know, Keith, you know, unfortunately, I talked to him after they were in that car wreck. I mean, bus wreck. But, you know, he said that they were worn out. And he said defensively, Tech had scored so fast, you know, on the first overtime. He said, you know, and then we got in this deal. He said, I felt like, you know, if we score, we've got to try to end it. Now, he had told me the play somehow, I don't know, you know how they're working with the new headset too. Somehow the play sort of got screwed up. Quarterback or one of the receivers didn't get it. It was supposed to be a pass. It looked like a quarterback draw. It was 4-by-1 empty, and it just didn't get executed, which was a shame. I mean, I think the kid threw for 518 yards.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he had himself.
I hate the fact that might have got screwed up, man. What a bummer there. What did you think of the new setup out in Lubbock, Coach? As far as like they did the big end zone project, and really it's been a big deal.
You know, I was down on the field pregame, very, very impressive. Taylor Young, obviously, and Brian Dance. You know, we had a lot of people that is crazy. Harrison Hanna, who was my manager at Baylor, that Joey has a great group out there. Kenny Perry took me around. It is second to none. They had a heck of a crowd, sold out crowd, great atmosphere. And you know, you could tell that a lot of them were talking about, oh, we want to get to the next game. And I think it's just a learning lesson for them. You know, I think they're better. They're a much better defense than they played Saturday. And I think you'll see that as it come on. But they're set up, and what I saw Kirby Holcott out there, who I've known forever from K-State, and I told him they should be very proud. You know, it really looks good. It looks like a big-time program.
By the way, Maverick McIver's dad, Rick, played at Texas in 79 through 83 and was a starting quarterback for them, and also was drafted, in fact, that year, just in case.
Played in St. Louis.
Yeah, absolutely.
He told me, this is crazy, and I got to look this up. I'm sure he's right. He said out of his year, I went to Fort Stock, my first year coaching. I went out there. Because I was the youngest guy on the A&M staff, I went and saw him play in high school. And obviously he told me, he said, I'll never forget, he told me, he said, if I can go to Texas, that's where I'm going. And obviously Fred Akers offered him, and they had a great career. But he told me in his signing class, they had 19 guys drafted. That's crazy.
Yeah, that sounds.
I knew they were good.
That's a lot. No, they used to, man. That was back when they had a bunch going into the NFL. Georgia, of course, I don't know what the record is, but they've.
Was there more rounds too?
Yeah. Well, there were many more rounds, like 13 or 14 rounds back then.
Yeah, that was more rounds. Yeah.
Yep.
Phil, when I watched Joe McGuire the other night. I mean, he's usually high energy, like bouncing back and forth on the sidelines. The fourth quarter of that game, he was obviously as tense as he's ever going to be. When you are about to get upset by a team that, you know, should not be in that position as a coach, is it tighter than when you're getting beaten by a team that's in your conference?
Absolutely. You know, that was a game, and Joey knew what they were faced with. And the thing you can never take out of it is you're still dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids. That they read the papers, they look at the who's favored, who's not, the mindset. Where I tell you what, you got to give, and Joey's very smart. They had a new coordinator. The Valdosta coordinator went to ACU, really did a good. McIver's gotten better. They had good transfers. And Joey knew that it could potentially be a tough game. But yeah, it's tougher because we can say what we want to, Paul, but perception in football is the fans. You know, I was trying to tell people around there the last day, I said, I played golf yesterday at Lubbock Country Club. I said, it's one game. I think they'll learn from it and grow, and that's what you do. Joey is very aware of what they were getting into in that game, and I think he'll get them better.
All right, Phil Bennett with us on 365 Sports. So Baylor, the guys that they brought in, the NIL, the transfers, Finn scored, threw for a couple of touchdowns. A wide receiver, Texas State scored. The tight end, Ole Miss scored, and then the linebacker, the JUCO transfer, had a pick six. Now it's Tarleton State, and they were on their second or third quarterback, but in a position where, hey, Tarleton State has moved up. They took care of business. Now they got a hell of a test at Utah, but just getting the win and showing some explosive plays. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. I watched. I was keeping it on the phone. The only thing that I didn't like was I'm not sure how well we ran the ball compared to them. They had a running back that averaged 5.5 yards a carry. Utah will be better on the line. I don't think they were ever really challenged, defensively. And it will, Rising will challenge them more. You would wish that they would have had a little, hopefully that they'll go out and play at that level against Utah. but it's going to be a lot different atmosphere, a lot different game. But yeah, I thought they took care of business. Everybody that got in seemed to make plays. And the only thing I didn't like is the 5.2. I think the kid had 68 yards in 11 or 12 carries. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, he ran hard. He was good.
Yeah. And I didn't like the 2 turnovers. The two picks in a big game, as we saw A&M versus Notre Dame. The 2 picks were the difference makers.
Phil, when you look at A&M and their offense now, this is against, these are 2 defensive, minded coaches, 2 of the best defensive minded coaches that are going right now. That game went about how you would expect. Offensively, what's your level of concern for Connor Wigman and the Aggies moving forward with Colin Klein?
Well, I think everybody at A&M, Connor has been anointed. Everybody at A&M have seen it. He played a good game one year against LSU, played fairly well against Miami last year, but Connor has never consistently been a producer. I looked at that game and I saw one quarterback just have a field presence like nobody, and then Connor sort of, I don't see a field presence, and he felt like he was lost. I'm not totally surprised by that. He didn't have the running game that would have helped him. His 2 picks, one of them was just a throwaway that really, ended up hurting him. And I think Colin will realize what he can do, what he can't do. I think the other thing that you've got to realize with A&M's offense is, man, I had no idea that Notre Dame would come out. I think they played man coverage every snap. And I'm not sure A&M was ready for that. And there were not seams. There were no plays to be made in the passing game. And then, A&M really didn't run the ball very well. Then defensively, their front played okay, but, Notre Dame played really, Notre Dame, I think, rushed for 65 yards first half, ended the game with almost 200 yards rushing. Which if you're rushing for 200 yards, you're going to win. A&M had 2 interceptions. Notre Dame had none. So A&M did not have a sack the whole night. And I know they have a good front, but Notre Dame's young offensive line really did a good job.
Coach, were you able to get eyes on the game last night? A nice way to end the weekend. I know there's another game tonight, but LSU and USC, there's been so much made about, Lincoln Riley running away from the SEC and this and that, but what a win for him and the Trojans.
I really thought that their quarterback, those 2 quarterbacks, both Nunsmeyer and the kid at USC, they looked like the real deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought both teams were really well coached on both sides of the ball. What a huge drive with USC on that last drive. And that young kid, now think about this. I think he might be the only quarterback in America that's been out of school 3 years and never been a starter that's still playing. You don't hear of that. Everybody's transferred.
Yeah.
And he, I remember Josh Henson's a good friend of mine. We worked at Arizona State together, and I saw him at a Crawfish Bowl. His daughter's still in town here. And we were talking. I said, well, I guess the guy from UNLV is going to be your quarterback. He said, Phil, I don't think he is. He said, there's something special about the kid that played against Louisville. And last night we saw it. he was so calm. He was in command, and Nunsmeyer was the same thing. Both defensive, who they were both terrible a year ago, are on their way to being fixed. Neither one of them are quite there yet, but I really enjoyed that game. It was a very well played game.
I
guess Lincoln was pretty. He probably sent Joe Castiglione a message. You know what? You guys beat LSU and didn't talk to me.
Yeah, I was happy for him because, and at the same time, at times he can be difficult, but that had to be a nice relief for them to win in against an SEC team. Paul?
Absolutely.
Phil, if Dabo Swinney called you right now and said, what should I do to fix my issues? Would you say get in the portal? Would you say adjust what you're doing? I'm curious from your perspective because he's the only one standing on the hill anymore.
I really believe in that game, his quarterback did not play well. I mean, he had some plays to be made, and he overthrew. If they could have scored early, I know the score looks like a wipeout, but it wasn't. I mean, it was a great defensive game for a long time. I thought his defense played good until certain things. And I tell you, I thought Mike Bobo did a really good job at Georgia when he saw what he was going against. And I don't know if you remember the plays, but they running these little naked boots with a cross back coming to a cross field. And they really, second half got after Clemson. I think that everybody's after Dabo because he wants people to know that, we're not just going to get in this deal because everybody else is. Obviously, you look at the portal, there are guys who can help your program. I think that without question, he'll reevaluate that. But I don't believe that's the only reason that they lost. They have a good team. We're going to find out that Georgia, if Beck plays the way he plays and their defense continues to play well, they're going to be one of those teams. They're going to beat a lot of people like that.
I think you're right. Somebody on the chat room asked about, can you try to, even though it was in the end shaky, how would you describe the atmosphere inside Jones AT&T Stadium?
It was good. I thought the fans were into it. They have new lighting, and I think it was very close to being totally packed. They stayed involved in the game, and you could tell that a couple of things happened for ACU, which, like I said, I worked with Keith Patterson. I've known him since he came out of college. He's a great coach, and that staff did a great job. They had them ready to play, and but let's not forget, Joey's guys found a way to win. And you know what? A lot of people can't say that. When Appalachian State beat A&M couldn't find a way to win, and Tech found a way to win, and that's the bottom line.
You mentioned a crawfish boil earlier. What is your favorite part of the crawfish boil?
Probably the Miller Lite after eating a couple of those hot crawfish. Somebody asked, my wife asked me one time, she said, do you think you could ever drink Diet Coke with crawfish? I said, hell no.
No.
What are you doing? If you're even, my wife will not eat crawfish. She won't get anywhere near it. But her friends have a crawfish bowl we go to most every year. And the first time that she was watching us all eat, she's like, why don't you use a fork for the potatoes? I'm like, why get a fork involved at this point?
Yeah.
Like, I would just need it for that. Everything else is my hands. I'll just grab a potato and eat it.
Every year we were at Baylor, Bo Trahan would have his crawfish bowl. Let me tell you something. It was a competition. Of course, I was at LSU for 5 years. I grew up near Shreveport, and my kids, they were little when we were there, so they know how to eat them like nobody's business and eat them fast. And people will look at my kids going, God, where'd they learn that? I mean, that's one of the things you have to learn in Louisiana. It is, snap the tail, push the tail up, eat it, and get another one.
Yep. And it did. And my only concern about that is that, like, I love the shrimp in a crawfish bowl, even though it's a crawfish bowl. But
it's filled. Yeah.
You mentioned the potatoes. I love the like red potatoes, whatever. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, little red potato.
The corn and all that stuff. And so now we have Texas and Michigan. I saw just a little bit of Michigan, Fresno State. Probably a pretty good year. Texas is still very, very loaded, and Michigan maybe is down more than a notch. It looks like they're going to struggle a little bit on offense, and they have the quarterback transition. Your thoughts about Texas up at the Big House against the Wolverines?
I think they will dominate Michigan. I think that, Fresno wasn't able to do it. Wink Martindale doesn't have a history of college offenses. I think he's going to have trouble. I watched, that was a closer game than people realize. It was close for a long time. And I think Michigan is new quarterback, and I think defensively that Texas is good enough to expose them some. I think that Sark will see some things that Michigan did that he could take advantage of that Fresno couldn't.
How many text messages from former coaches or even some that are still coaching do you have throughout a weekend?
Oh my God. We drove back from Lubbock today, and my wife, I said, "You're gonna have to drive. I've got to answer these texts." It's crazy. I just, when you've done something so long, you're connected to so many people.
Mm-hmm.
The other night they were asking me, "Who do you want to win?" You got, Jared Holley, who was an All-American for me at Pitt and coached with me at Arizona State and North Texas, is at ACU. Keith was with us at ACU. All my friends at Tech, I said, I want the best team to win. I want to watch both of them. And I thought that Tech, like I said, I'm going to say this again, they found a way to win. And Keith and them will take that game and grow. I have a lot of people that I talk to, and what I try to do, I just try to keep, especially the young coaches, I try to keep them, up and at it. Because, nowadays, we talked about this, Smokey. I mean, everybody's a coach. Everybody's a critic. I was proud. I thought A&M, the atmosphere when they played, it was outstanding. Now, everybody's saying, well, what's wrong with Wigman? What's wrong with Colin Klein? It's one game, and it could have been the difference of one or two plays throughout the game. So, I talked to quite a few of them, and it's something I don't try to be too judgmental, but I do try to be honest.
What are your thoughts on Colorado going to Nebraska this week?
I think that Matt is building something there. I thought that I think Colorado could be in trouble. I say this again. They hired a guy, not that he's a bad coach, but he hasn't really coached in college. He's been with the Cincinnati Bengals, and it was obvious when I sat there and watched North Dakota State pretty much score at will. At the end, get back in the game, score. It became a score fest. I think at home, Matt's young quarterback, I think they're better. I think they have a better grip on what they want to be, and they're pretty dang good. They will challenge them on defense much more than North Dakota State did. And I think it could be a big day for the Cornhuskers.
Well, they had the freshman quarterback who I thought looked pretty poised. I don't know if they can run the ball much. Even though they ran for a lot of yards, I still don't know if they have a dynamic running back. So it'll be interesting. And they just need a nice win. They just need
Well, and you know what? They need something at home to get those fans excited. I told people this. When Frank Solis was there, I was at Kansas State, and you go into Lincoln, Nebraska. I mean, I've been in Lincoln, I've been in Tiger Stadium, I've been in Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida, A&M. I mean, all those places. None were any better than Nebraska. And I'm talking about, I mean, they're great fans, and they are loud and they're proud.
I know this is all so ancient history at this point, but Nebraska was a program really like no other, just the consistency they had. Do you remember your reaction when they fired Frank Solich?
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's be honest. Never been the same.
Yeah.
Ever. The guy, Billy Callahan had it for just a little bit. And you know what? Coach Osborne did everything he could to keep that from happening. And it's just been now I do believe, I think I watched Matt the other night on that Fox special. Did you guys see that when he was talking about the old quarterback from from Colorado. I can't the one that's on Fox.
Joe Klatt.
Joe, yeah. And I'm telling you, he's got a plan, and I hope they can get the guys. I've got some good friends on that staff, and I think they're great coaches. I've always liked Joey, and he's got a plan, and I'd like to see him get it going.
Phil, thank you very much, man. It's great to have you on. You get some rest after that long trip, and
hey, I'm looking forward to another good week of football. It's a great time of the year.
Cannot wait. Phil Bennett with us, and always just love the fact he can break down the games, what coaches are doing, talk a little defenses, X's and O's, schemes, etc., trends. Appreciate his time as always.
Did he fly or drive to Lubbock?
Drove.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that's why
that
Tim
takes a little while
Coulter,
longer.
Tim Coulter goes, I wish you would have had him drop by our tailgate. I text Phil. I guessed it might have been sometime Saturday evening, whatever. And I said, are you in the middle of all that madness at Kyle Field? And he goes, actually, I'm in Lubbock. And he just went up there. He had accepted an invitation from just some friends of his anyway. And so he decided he was going to go to the game. And what a game he saw.
Well, that's cool that he did. And I think that should make certain Tech fans feel better hearing what he has to say. I'm in agreement. I'm trying not to overreact to too much of what we saw. That's always hard to do because we've been feverishly awaiting results and action, and then we see it, and it's hard not to just jump and overreact to a lot of it. But I do think that there are some concerns for Texas Tech, but that's not the way the rest of the year is going to play. Like, that's not indicative of the rest of the year playing out that way. I think they had some young guys in the secondary, just need to get their feet wet a little bit, and they'll be okay. I don't know how good they'll be. I was thinking, however, that during the offseason I mentioned quite a bit of, like, it just seemed like the hype behind Texas Tech was a little quieter than it was the year prior.
Yeah, no question.
And I figured that was probably because, like, you don't want to set expectations too sky high because then you're undershooting them, even if you have some success. But then I thought about it, and I was like, well, maybe they didn't hype it up because they knew that it was going to look like this early on. And so you didn't have a reason to really hype it up that much. There's also that part of it that they kind of knew, like, hey, this might need some work early on, especially defensively. So I don't know, that thought definitely crossed my mind, but I do think they're going to be okay. That defense will have to be much, much better, though, obviously, for them to be successful and get back to where they've been the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think
they got very, very lucky there. The communication went out. Are you freaking kidding me? Of all times in the game.
You know why? Because Connor Stallions was on the Tech staff, and he said, block but I did not think the timing was right. But then again, Phil talked to the coach, and he said they were gassed because
they didn't have the right play run, obviously. Yeah. So, I didn't like that call either that early in overtime, but I can understand if you're gassed, you're gassed.
The reason because I thought they were matching play.
Exactly right. Yeah. They didn't need to feel like they had to go for it all in one fell swoop. They could have just gone back and forth and played that out that way. I can understand going for two another time or two later, but that right there, that quickly, I didn't feel like that was the case. But, hey, it's easy to second-guess it. They played their asses off. ACU deserves a lot of credit. Part of me wishes they would have got the win just because that would have been huge for them. But also, on the other hand, like, that would have been an awful loss. Awful loss for Texas Tech and the league. So, it worked out well for that side of the coin. But, yeah, hats off to ACU for the fight, and Tech got the win, like he said, and now they can move on and play better.
Yep. Just you imagine and we have, as you know, Kim Coulter, Katie Rader, and many others that are huge a part of what we do. And I can't even imagine. Like, I thought about those guys. I was thinking, like, what do you do? You lose that game. That doesn't mean your season's over. You can still win the Big 12, but holy crap. But you're right. Well, it was a little more neutered this year entering the season. They found a way to win. Now they've got to go on the road against Washington State in a tough environment, and maybe they'll play loose and actually do what they do.
It's just a whirlwind of crap, though, if you're Joey McGuire and you lose to ACU.
But he didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't lose to ACU. They didn't lose. They won that game, so that's what matters. Yeah. And all the what-ifs and wondering, we'll have to wait for another potential upset to occur in future years to maybe have an idea of what that would be like, because they did win that game.
All right, so I thought maybe it was Katie Rader that Don Williams asked Joey about Taj Brooks, who might be a little bit dinged up, which, of course, is the motor of that offense.
He had a normal night for him the other night. Now, I have not watched the press conference from today, so I guess that's where that was mentioned.
Yeah,
yeah, okay. Well, no, I hadn't seen that, so that would obviously be of major interest if that's the case at all. But, I mean, he runs hard. He runs a lot, so he's a tank, but yeah, I mean, you run that way and you're going to get dinged up on occasion. Just the severity is the question.
I can't imagine. He's like a tank. Taj Brooks' arm questionable for Washington State with Don Williams of the Avalanche Journal.
Okay, well, yeah, that's definitely notable. We'll see how it goes. That's why the injury reports will come in handy, huh? Like, to be able to have that type of information. And Tech is obviously one of the leaders in terms of making that public. So
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think Joey got a little bit. I didn't see it, so he probably got a little bit perturbed by it. But you're going to release it. Hey, Garrett, do you have the statement from Abilene Christian? I don't know if everyone saw this or not, but after the game, on their way back, and this eventually was that there was somebody charged with a DWI after they crashed into the Abilene Christian football team bus that injured 4 people. This was the statement, and what was really cool at the end was that we are grateful to Texas Tech Directors of Athletics, Kirby Hocutt, their physician, Dr. Michael Fye, and all of the first responders for their assistance and care. When I saw that, when I got up early, because I got up pretty early Saturday, and I'm like, oh, my God. And so luckily there were people injured, though. 4 individuals, minor injuries, 2 coaches, bus driver, and a student athlete.
Well, they barely even got out of town. Is it Marcia Sharp Frontage Road and University Avenue? Like, they barely even left the stadium when that happened based on that. So, drunk driver, man, come on. I've seen so many horrific drunk driving stories, it feels like, in the last couple weeks in particular.
What about the hockey players? Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of them. Yeah. There's been numerous terrible, like, whole family wiped out in one story I read the other day. And I can't tolerate that. And I know, how that goes. But
it's
man.
It's not hard to get a cab, a ride, or an Uber. That's where it makes you really upset. Like, that we are in a period now, like,
easier than ever.
It's easier than ever. Not that it was ever really an excuse, because there's always a way. But now it is so commonplace, like, having all these things at your disposal. It'd be like sneezing and going, well, what do I do? You're like, get a Kleenex.
Yeah,
like,
you do this.
Yeah, I mean, there's all these things you can do. Like, so that's where it's, as we get further on in our society and technology and all these things, in most cities, including Lubbock, even though you may have to wait a little while with that traffic, I promise you there's a person at that stadium also who can give you a ride.
I guarantee you in Lubbock, Uber drivers make bank based on how many people are drinking and asking for rides. This is a 19-year-old disregarded traffic direction and crashed into a bus, bro. That's how drunk you crashed into a bus. Like, anyways, I'm glad nobody was seriously hurt.
He's
but
lucky. He's lucky he didn't saw himself off.
I'm seeing way too many of those types of stories. It's kind of terrifying how often that seems to be happening. Maybe I'm just reading it more. I don't know, but it just seems like it's a lot.
One note: Texas A&M starting center Mark Nabu out for the rest of the year with a torn ACL. That's a story that came down. They have that's one of the areas where they have pretty good depth at A&M, but he's out for the rest of the year, and so. Those stories that a couple of nuggets along the way. Garrett, what is the only thing that we have not used?
We have Dan Mullen's funny tweet.
Let's do that. Paul loved this.
I did.
You're such a sickhead.
Paul, were you torn seeing Miami be so good, but Florida be so bad?
I hate watched every second of that game. I mean, there was nothing.
I'm a huge Cam Ward guy. Not going to proclaim that I found him, but he's another one of those guys like Jeanty, though, because of the stuff that I do, that there's certain guys that I just latch onto a little quicker. And so who's this kid in Incarnate Word?
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? And then obviously at Wazoo, he was pretty terrific, but I love watching him do his thing and give Miami a whole new dimension.
Yeah. Thrilled for them.
Okay.
And look, I will say this. I mean, part of me got nostalgic watching the Canes do the chomp and the, like really sticking it to Florida and looking like they had some of that Miami swagger back. But this tweet, Garrett, if you may, Matt Berry, who's his co-host,
his buddy,
said the Florida coach that got fired took his team to 3 New Year's Six Bowls game in 3 years, and then he got fired in the 4th year. And Dan Mullen reposted it. So it is good to know. Now, Dan Mullen got let go.
Well, they were probably sitting right next to each other when that happened, by the way.
Yeah. Dan Mullen got let go because they felt that he was not going to recruit at the pace that Kirby Smart was clearly, going at. So they let him go. And that has proven to not be a good decision. I don't think Billy Napier is going to make it out of this year. I think that they have – there's nothing – what's the good news about Florida football right now?
DJ Lagway.
But – again,
if he's still there next year.
Well, I know, but yes, right now. Well, he's there right now.
Yeah.
But I saw, I don't even know who started the tweet spree, but somebody did it, and then everybody else was following. It felt like DJ Lagway in College Station next year. A lot of that. A lot of that. Too. But beyond that, Paul, to answer your question, there's talent here and there, but it's not like anything that is setting your positivity radar on fire when it comes to the future.
So there's nothing like every single rival that Florida has and every major school around them is doing well right now. FSU's coming off a 13-0 year. Georgia's coming off
13-1.
Okay. Georgia's coming
Sorry.
Georgia's coming off.
And on a 2-game losing streak.
Yeah.
Georgia's coming off. Not coming off. Georgia's a juggernaut. Georgia's the best program top to bottom in the country. Yep. I'm going to blow right by it.
No, they are.
They're the best program in the country.
Yep.
Tennessee is on the way up. They've got an exciting young quarterback in Nico Maliava. They got Josh Heupel. They got a cool offense. They got all these things going for them.
Huge fan base.
LSU's worst news is they lose to teams like FSU, USC, and Bama. It's not the worst day in the world for LSU. So even when people like Garrett are depressed, people at Florida are like, we don't know our sadness. You don't know what's going on right now. Alabama loses the greatest coach of all time, turns around and gets a guy who was coaching the national championship game, a week before. So, what's going good for Gainesville right now? UCF might be better than they are.
You're having
Miami
too much fun
better.
with this.
I'm just stating
quite
all
frankly,
facts.
the team that's sort of an evil twin of yours is now in the conference in Texas. And pretty damn good based on game number 1 as well.
All right. I'm glad you brought up, Craig, that 13-1.
But the Napier stuff, that gets ratcheted up big time after that initial game. And we'll see. They go lose to UCF here in the next couple weeks. Hey, by the way, KJ Jefferson was okay. No, he wasn't.
No,
he wasn't.
The running game was great, but he had the second worst rating behind Connor Wigman.
So I think there's obviously a lot to love about RJ Harvey. And
Penny
I wonder
Boone?
how much we're going to Penny Boone, but it's really RJ Harvey's the main dude. But Penny Boone, okay, so UCF can run the football. We figured that coming in. You knew that was going to be a strength of theirs rolling in, and that was verified as a strength of theirs, at least in game number 1. They're going to be able to run the football. Throwing the football, on the other hand, if you've watched KJ Jefferson over the years, then you saw a lot of the lowlights, I think, on Saturday. He started off really bad. I think it got better, but it's not anywhere close to that's inspiring that it's going to get really good through the course of the season. So he's going to have to be better throwing the football, but there's obviously a ceiling there, right? He's who he is. And so you saw some of the bad for sure that comes with his play. Fortunately, they have that run game, but they're not going to obviously be able to just lean on that. But hey, they won big. They got out of there. Gus Malzahn was clearly not satisfied by any stretch, and that quarterback spot is absolutely where you look at that team right now, and you go, that's where it's going to be taken to a great level, a middle level, or it's going to sink at some point.
Or it's going to hurt them, yeah. Or it's going to keep them from being even better.
Unless they make the move to Ja'Cory Brown here in the near future, yeah.
Utah's cornerback, Keenan Johnson, unfortunately out for the year. He, of course, starter. They play Baylor on Saturday. Aliki Vamahi defensive tackle, was injured. Good news for him is it's not a long-term. It's like he's not out for the year, but that was something Kyle Whittingham, who also today, it was great to have Cam and Brent back, the tight end from Keithy, on the field last week. Lethal chemistry between those two.
Well, they've been playing with each other for 7 years now, so they've had time to develop that chemistry. No, actually pretty close to that, actually. No, they looked really good coming back. I was thrilled for Rising and Keithy both. Keithy's had like a couple years in a row where it's been injury-riddled, and most of last year, both those guys were just completely not a part of the equation in any way. So that was a long time coming to see them both back out there and playing healthy and doing their thing, and they didn't waste any time in getting back to it and showing why Utah's a favorite for many people to win this conference, because they've got two very old, seasoned veterans that are talented players that know what they're doing and can make big plays or spur others to make big plays. And Keithy's a treat to watch. He's such a tough dude. Had a highlight reel. I don't know if you saw that touchdown where he fought his way into the end zone.
Oh, yeah.
But he had a huge game, 3 TDs. And then Rising looked really good. Obviously, you want to protect him as best you can. So we'll see how that goes over the long term. But I think that was – and then Dijon Stanley, I mean, had a huge game as well. They're running back. So they're good, but that was expected, and I think that just confirmed a lot of feelings. But most of all, just great to see them back.
Yeah, no, that's what Rising was saying. It ought to be interesting to watch them as they hopefully will be able to play at every game. Keith Patterson, the head coach at Abilene Christian, when he was asked about the bus incident, I feel like I tried to tackle Taj Brooks without any pads on.
Ooh.
So it made that thankful no one was seriously injured. There's no doubt that God was watching over us. I got a stat. This is an old man stat. North Dakota, in that loss to Iowa State, had a 23-play, 88-yard drive that took 12 minutes and 24 seconds off the clock, and they kicked the field goal.
That's part of why that was a low-scoring game when you're soaking up that much.
Well, you have a whole quarter.
23 plays, 88 drive. Do we have the Dave Aranda comment? So after the game, I wasn't in the postgame. Craig, you were there. I was back here with Garrett as we were doing the postgame. But Dave Aranda, when asked about calling plays as a defensive coordinator, listen to only this kind of answer you would hear from him.
Angry a lot of times. You don't want to give people anything, and obviously they're always going to get things. I think, we had an academic. There's a professor that comes to the dinner on last night, Friday night, and so they'll come to the walkthrough, and then they'll be at practice, or they'll be at the walkthrough, then they'll be at the dinner Friday night, and they asked that question. And it's I think how I said it then was like, man, it's like you're a fighter pilot. You get this great fighter jet, and it's all this all this stuff, and it's got all these weapons, and you get to fly the thing. But there's people out there that want to kill you, And so like you get to fly it, but you don't want to die. So that's how I feel about calling plays. I feel that all the time. And I think the prep and to do all the stuff right.
That's a unique answer that only Dave Aranda would probably come up with. That wasn't even like the only analogy he made that was pretty good either. The lunch table one was pretty good too. But
thanks to Jack, who's at the post game, for doing that. But we had to play that.
You get to fly it, but also people are trying to kill you.
Since we don't get a chance to talk to him as much anymore at all.
He definitely had the defense out there running around and hitting and doing all of that, and looking a lot better, but he did also seem to me exhausted, as you might imagine, being the head coach and the defensive coordinator. And plus it was like already at that point, like 10 o'clock at night or something like that. Game dragged on in the second half, and I'm sure he was spent, but yeah, he seemed exhausted when he was in that presser, just ready to go get some shut-eye, but he delivered a couple of funny notes before he sent off into the night.
Do we have time to run the video that Jack and Emery put together, the minute piece?
Yeah, we can run that real quick.
All right, this is something I wanted to promote, because sometimes we just go about our business and need to let you know how many people are doing. I mentioned Craig's post-game reaction, rapid reaction, and then the next day, the good, the bad, and ugly. This is just there's about a minute with Jack McKenzie and our Emery Winter, too, as they kind of summarize the game from their perspective. All right. Well done, Jack and Emery, with what they do. Sometimes, a lot of times, they're behind the scenes and you don't know. Last thing, Scott Frost is joining the L.A. Rams as an analyst.
Good for Scott.
It's been a while since we heard much from him.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where he becomes an offensive coordinator soon. That'll be soon. I would say next year.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Because he's going to want to do it. Yeah.
I mean, he can want all he wants to. I don't know really how he's perceived, though. That's the thing.
Well, as a coordinator, I think he's probably perceived pretty good.
Yeah, but last we saw him, he kind of had to go take care of his personal life, it felt like, true, and just things didn't end all that well. I mean, I think that's an encouraging sign, obviously, that he's joining an NFL staff, and the guy knows football, but boy, that burned out, I mean, in a bad way there in Lincoln. He went from the Hive, the UCF run, which was very brief for him, but very successful, and obviously launched him into that Nebraska gig, but he was not ready for that, clearly, and it just makes it a little more awkward when that's your school, too, on top of that. You know, that's the downside to hiring a guy from inside, so to speak, but I'll always be a Scott Frost fan for what he did in his playing days, but good for him to have that opportunity. And I think you're right, Paul. He'll eventually come back. I just don't know if it's like as automatic as he'll get a job next year.
It's disappointing, and they were just so erratic and undisciplined, and he was too, as far as the way that program was being run. But I'll always remember him for scoring against Tennessee and in the postgame saying, hey, everyone saw what we did, and they won the national title.
We probably talked him into getting a split national title in so many ways.
I think so. Here's a last thing, college football.
Which, by the way, the split national title was decided last night. They've taken away LSU's from.
Yeah, I think they took. Yeah,
they took. That should have been on the line. Actually, if you would have done that, like loser loses their national title, that would have been something.
Number 5 most yards thrown by a transfer quarterback in the first weekend. Kyle McCord at Brown in Syracuse, 354. Dylan Gabriel, despite a struggle, at Oregon, 380. Brendan Sorsby at Cincinnati, 383.
Well, I think the Dylan Gabriel just points out that these stats don't mean everything. Yep. But yeah, it's a nice number.
Cam Ward, we mentioned him, 385. And Chandler Morris, North Texas, threw for 415 yards, the most of any transfer quarterback.
Brendan Sorsby, Texas guy. So good to see him do well. Just got the starting job there at Cincy and had a really nice day. That was encouraging. That was a good sign for the Bearcats to have him play as well as he did right out of the gates. Who else did you mention there?
Oh, I know you're going to ask me. Okay, it was Cam Ward, Sorsby, Chandler Morris.
Yeah, Chandler Morris had a great game for North Texas.
Gabriel. And now, damn it, I just had it. Hold on.
It's fine.
Here we go. I got it right here.
Well, Chandler Morris,
Cam Ward, Sorsby, Dylan Gabriel, Kyle McCord.
Okay, yeah. I think Chandler Morris is a good fit at North Texas. I think he should do really well there. Receiver had a big game as well for the Mean Green. So that's good. That's some nice text. If you look around the country, if you're looking for wide receivers, I think you're looking to Louisiana is like one of the first places you look, and Florida probably as well. If you're looking for quarterbacks, there's a lot of California. There's a lot of Texas out there too.
Boy,
I mean, those are the two that really seem to be pumping out the quarterbacks in a major way. And that's evident when you look at Cam Ward and Brendan Sorsby and Chandler Morris, and Hudson Card had a huge game. And
Purdue.
Yeah, for Purdue. And there's a lot of others as well. But the Dylan Gabriel debut left a lot to be desired, but clearly they're going to put up some crazy numbers. I think he'll be okay again. It's hard to not overreact, but we can't overreact to every single thing from week number 1.
Florida State tonight playing Boston College. Boston College will be without starting offensive tackle, offensive lineman Logan Taylor, and defensive back Cam Martinez, as the conspiracy theorists can start now. We'll come back. Paul Catalina at his top 5. IdealMRI.com. So I sent a note to Dr. Ackley at the Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine. I may have brought this up, I'm not sure, on Thursday or not. I've had the lower back injection. I've been through, that's just part of being my age, but I still feel active and I feel okay. But my right hip continues to bother me enough to where it's more than it should be. And probably I don't really talk about it too much, but I sent him a note in the portal. I would like to I can't go get an MRI just because I want one. So he sent a note to Ideal MRI about getting an MRI. But he said on my lower back, which sometimes can create the problems in your legs, etc. But I want one on my hip, and so I sent another portal note back to him. But I'm going to be inside that state-of-the-art imaging machine. It probably won't be this week, but I know Dr. Rob Maxey and his staff will get in touch with me, and we'll get that done. And then you know what? Even if the MRI of my hip doesn't show anything structurally wrong with it, at least that will be a clear mind. I'll know it's not a muscle or a ligament or a bone or something else that's there. And I'm just tired of it. And so I want to get it fixed. And that's where I'm going to go once they decide whether it's my hip or my lower back or hell, maybe even both. Ideal MRI, $497 or less every single time. They called me immediately. And then that's when I said, I'd like to maybe have it looked at my hip. So we're waiting to get final answer on that, but I'm going to be there at some point in the next few days because they're the best at idealmri.com.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
For Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome in. I hope you enjoyed week 1 of the college football season. And that's why today's Texas Beef House, Paul Catalina's Top 5, is my week 1 thoughts. Of course, use promo code 365sports at checkout. Jack McKenzie and I want a bid. There is beef on the way. So now I can look at my family and say, I've done something now. Have you ever won a beef auction? No. There you go. Not that it's impossible to do so. It's not like any kind of feat of strength or anything. It was just persistence and patience and adherence to our love of high quality Wagyu beef that Texas Beef House provides. So that is about as enthusiastic commercials I can give for anybody. I'll tell you that right now, because we do love TexasBeefHouse.com and bidonbeef.com. So let's get into the week 1 thoughts. Number 5, if you please. Cam Ward has flipped the ACC to Miami. Right now, there's not another quarterback in the league that's on his level. Now, we'll see how things progress week to week. I'm not ready to give Miami the crown just yet, but given their schedule, and that is very favorable for them this year, they have some tough games, but this was one of the toughest places to play in the entire country, and they had no problems all game long. Florida was never in it, and due in large part to the fact that Cam Ward has changed a moribund offense into something that is wide open and fun, and Shannon Dawson is no longer afraid of his own shadow, and they're going to be able to do things. And Florida State and Miami were in it all the way to the end for Cam Ward. Miami was the place he wanted to go. Florida State settled on DJU, and I do think that this is the swing player of this league this year. Very likely. Now, we'll see what happens. It's only 1 week. Other coaches will watch film and figure it out. But so far, whoa. On Cam Ward, this was a great pickup for them. And I've been saying this the entire offseason of, crap, Miami's got Cam Ward now. They finally have a quarterback that other people want for the first time in 20 years. And it's come back to bite everybody in the butt that was kicking dirt on Miami's grave. Number 4, Joey McGuire needed a stiff drink. I have never seen that man that tense. They held off what would have been a cataclysmic loss to ACU. He has not been great early in seasons there at Tech. They take time to build momentum. But giving up 51 points to, albeit a really good FCS team, is not something you need to do. They've got to get their defense right in a hurry. And right now, they've got coaches all around the country that have Tech on their schedule making notes on the things that ACU did to expose those Texas Tech weaknesses. Now, to Tech's credit, a lot of teams, lesser teams, would have lost that game. Would have let the moment get too big for them and lost that game. They did not, but that was in no way good news all the way around for Tech to start out the season. And, you know, Joey's going to probably have to ride the roller coaster a little bit, but he definitely needed a stiff drink after that one. He was as nervous, puckered up, tense, whatever you want to say, as I've ever seen him at that game, and rightfully so. It should have never been that way, but credit to ACU for a great game plan and playing with a ton of emotion. Number 3, Billy Napier probably doesn't make the turn. When I say the turn, look, there are 12 games, so 6 would be the turn. If he makes it through 6 or 7 games, then maybe they've got an uptick, but the vibe around that program right now, they had a player the other day, Instagramming or TikToking or something, F this team with a middle finger. They've got chemistry problems. They've got roster problems. It starts from the top down. Billy Napier, probably not the guy that they thought he was going to be when they made this hire. I thought it was a good hire at the time, but clearly nothing's working out. It's not that they lost to Miami. Miami punched them in the mouth over and over and over again at the Swamp. They don't lose like that at the Swamp. That's not what happens at the Swamp. Yeah, you may lose games there, but you don't get blown out. And Cam Ward, Damian Martinez, Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, all of them just ripped him a new one. And Miami's defense had that old school Miami defense swagger. The Gators had nothing. I mean, they had nothing. I mean, this might be as bland as I've ever seen them. I like the hire of Billy Napier. I think he'll probably be successful somewhere else, but this is probably not a fit right now. And I don't know if he makes the turn after 6 games or not, or if they need to let him go and try to keep. They've got some good recruits coming in, but again, you've got to keep DJ Lagway there. You've got to keep some of these good recruits that you keep signing in. If it's about NIL and all that other stuff, then it can be about a different guy, and I would not be surprised to see if they make a coaching change just to excite some of those good recruits, the 4 and 5 stars they have coming in. That has not translated for him yet. Number 2, Danton Lynn is the DC hire of the offseason. Am I overreacting to one game? No. You know why? I have 5 years of Alex Grinch proof on Lincoln Riley coach teams. Never once in 5 years did I see a defensive game plan like that. Not only that, they showed how big he was on getting these guys from dough balls into granite, and they're tougher, they're bigger, they're stronger. Mason Cobb, who came in from Oklahoma State, fits that plan really well. He's a stud for them. They have not had defensive legit studs in a couple years at USC. I'm sure Caleb Williams was watching that game last night going, the hell, bro? You make 5 more tackles from me and we're probably hoisting a trophy. But no, yeah, that's how I would feel. That's how I would feel if I were Caleb Williams. All it took was hiring this guy?
That's all you had to do. You didn't have to. They didn't have to change personnel. They just had to feed them differently. I mean, like, are you nuts? What's going on here? Danton Lynn, the hire of the offseason as far as defensive coordinators go. I don't know on offensive coordinators yet because most of the good games we saw were not the array of touchdowns you would say from a new offensive coordinator, or if you saw an array of touchdowns, they were against a team you should have had an array of touchdowns again. And finally, number one. Oh, well, I thought that motion would be cool, and it didn't work. There it goes. Dabo hasn't learned. Oh, Dabo, Dabo, Dabo. It's not about having 40 transfers. It's about having 7 to 12 transfers that fill the spots that are going to be there on your roster anyway. Georgia took 12 transfers last year, and London Humphreys was one of them. He scored a touchdown against you. Colby Young was one of them. He scored a touchdown against you. Cash Jones was one of them. He's also in that club. He scored a touchdown against you. One of the differences in that game, not the only difference, it was a stark difference, mind you, was that Georgia fills their holes with veterans. Clemson still doing it the way that they used to do it, even though all the rules have changed. Man, like, Uno changes the rules all the time. You're not going to win at Uno now if you keep playing 1987 Uno. You got to play 2024 Uno. And I apologize for that metaphor, but it's the first thing I came up with. He's got to change. The other thing is the high school recruiting, which he's only exclusively doing. Compared to him in Georgia, there's a gap now where just 5 years ago, no gap. Now, Georgia has lapped him. Maybe twice when it comes to high school talent. That is more than evident because his high school recruits and their high school recruits are not even in the same ballpark right now. And that is not something old Clemson could have said. Old Clemson could have been like, well, our guys and their guys are about the same because, you know, one went there, one went here. That's not the case anymore. And Dabo hasn't learned. Those are my week one thoughts. We're wrapping it up right now.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. I want to look back at the end of the year and see the scores that Georgia has. I know they have some really very, very what could be fun games, and like they play at Texas. There's going to be there's going to be a game where they just aren't, the other team plays well, but I think they're going to beat people up for the most part at least 8 or 9 times on their schedule this year.
If not more than that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's going to be a hell of a matchup when they play Texas. That's going to be insane. And I know there's other games on that schedule that will be pretty interesting as well. But my main thought coming out of this weekend is that Georgia looks like the best football team in the country. And I don't know if it's that Dabo hasn't learned, Paul. He's just in that stage where it's hard to admit the truth.
Yeah.
And it's also the first game. So I know this is probably the unpopular take, but I know I'm not alone because I've heard a couple of other people that echo the same thing. Let me see them play somebody not named Georgia, and then we'll revisit just where things are. But he's not in a spot where they're a national title caliber team now, which is the big thing. Like, you're not on Georgia's level. And I understand that
was my point.
Yeah.
My point is that Clemson is now become accustomed to winning at the same level that Georgia is winning at right
Georgia's
now.
just in a –
But Georgia has taken it to another level because Kirby Smart is willing to do different things to make sure his team is better.
Right.
Dabo is behind. Now, look, if you want to tell me that Clemson's going to win 8-9 games and go to a bowl game, yeah, I believe that. I think they're that good, but that's not why he's the second highest paid coach in the country.
No, I agree with that.
And so that's where I think the difference is that, 5 years ago, there was not this kind of a gap between Clemson and Georgia. Like but it is evident now in just 5 years that Georgia's so far ahead of them.
I agree. I just think that gap's for everybody too as well. So Clemson's not in the spot that they were in, and they've got to change that. I don't think it helps when Cade Klubnik has not panned out to be nearly the player that you thought he was going to be. That's been disappointing. I talk a lot about the Texas guys. I was expecting like, oh man, there's this guy at Clemson now. That'll be a great rep to have on the list each week, and I think he's made it one time.
That's back-to-back guys.
Yeah, I think he's made it one time on our award list, Cade Klubnik. So
on the Earl Campbell one?
Yeah, he's not put up a lot of big performances in his time. So I hope for his sake and Clemson's sake that changes. But there is a little bit of a question mark there developed or has been developed for a little while.
Well, Paul, because you wanted to keep talking about one of your favorite teams in Clemson, you helped us run a little bit late. And I'm going to keep you for another couple of minutes, despite there's a kickoff at 6:30. So you're not leaving until I'm done with the promos.
No, I'm
for Paul
I'm
Catalina and for Craig Smoak, for Garrett Ross, Emery Winter, who's working on 365 Sports tonight, 10:30 tonight in the CW, and also so many our great sponsors, all of them, and you who are a part of it today, looking back at a college football weekend. And here we go with another week ahead. This is 365 Sports.